Grace. How you doing? Good, good.
So is this volleyball game? Is it districts already, or?
Yeah, this is it. This is the final game. This is final regular season game tonight.
Oh, okay, then districts will be. Is there districts in volleyball? District tournament? Is there a district tournament?
No, not anymore.
Okay.
I don't know. That's a good question. How you doing? Good, good. I'm not quite sure. I don't think so. Well, no, because the district state is 2 weeks from, so there must be
District tournament.
there must be a district tournament.
It's crazy how fall sports already coming to an end.
I know.
My buddy Josh, Josh Ryan, the principal at Eco.
Yeah.
He used to be at Capital. His daughter plays for Las Cruces soccer.
Oh wow.
They're pretty good this year.
They gotta play Cleveland.
They got to play they're playing Santa Fe High. I'm sorry? Yeah, his daughter plays for Las Cruces Bulldogs. So she's but Santa Fe High is going down to Las Cruces tomorrow to play them.
There every day.
I told Josh, I was like, who are you cheering for, your paycheck or your daughter? Santa Fe Public Schools, So.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Santa Fe Public Schools Board of Education. It is October 27th at 5:30. Welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. Always nice to see people. We will start as ever with the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the New Mexico flag in English and in Spanish, as well as the acknowledgement of tribal land. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the acknowledgement of tribal land. We acknowledge that our Board of Education meeting is taking place on occupied indigenous land. We acknowledge the Civil lands and other tribal lands of Louisiana. We honor these people, past, present, and future. We acknowledge the history and ongoing colonization of where we are sitting right now in Mexico and in our country. We acknowledge our own place in the story of colonization. Thank you very much. We move on to approval of the agenda. Superintendent, do we need any changes?
No changes this evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Madam President, move to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Vice President Bose. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we have approved the agenda. Roman numeral 2, introduction of interpreter. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Noble. Deputy Superintendent Romero, please.
Para asistencia con la traducción en español, el señor Lucero te ayudará.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Roman numeral 3, public forum. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. And with us tonight, taking us through public forum, is our Public Information Officer, Mr. Cody Lenarski, and today is his birthday. Happy birthday.
Good evening, Board President, members of the Board, Superintendent Chavez. There are 12 people signed up for public forum comment tonight. 9 of them have signed up in person. 3 of them have signed up via email. So if you'd like, we will start with the in-person, so we're not holding them up. The first public forum speaker is Isabel Sandoval.
Mr. Konarski, do you want to go over rules?
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
This is the second time I've done this. Public forum includes online and/or virtual participation as needed, as well as in-person comments when the board holds in-person meetings. Please listen and speak with respect. No uncivil conduct will be permitted. Please do not discuss any specific student who is not your own. There will be no sharing of time. Self-monitor and observe the 3-minute time limit. I will give you a 30-second warning when your time is almost up. Public commentary and dialogue are only allowed during public forum, not throughout the meeting. Please search for answers on common ground. You may speak on any topic, whether it's on the agenda or not. Your input will be taken into consideration. Please be advised that the board may discuss your issue during the meeting, but by law, the board cannot take action on items that are not on the agenda. Please do not discuss employee matters which may result in disciplinary action. Instead, notify the employee supervisor, the Human Resources Department, or the superintendent. So.
Well, good evening. My name is Isabel Sandoval, and I'm a retired Santa Fe, I guess, district employee. So at one time I worked here. I'm here today, though, to represent Mandela School, and I am asking for permanent designation of the secondary site for Mandela School. My granddaughter attends Mandela School. We need a school for secondary students. I remember working here when it was Laragoite. It is an elementary school. Secondary students grow. We know middle school students are different than high school students. To teach and to learn, students need to be able to work in an ambiance that is conducive to learning. Teachers need to teach in a place they can teach. I am really supportive of Mandela because I'm thinking of my grandfather who used to say, and he was from the Mora Valley, and we all know where Mora is, right? And he would say, en la ciudad de los ciegos, el tuerto es rey. And that means, in the city of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And when we do this, I really ask the board to look at planning. How do we plan for the future? Our students must embrace the future. So to embrace the future, they need to be in a setting that's conducive to learning. I'm thinking of a co-worker I worked with many years ago, and she was from the Santo Domingo Pueblo, and she had a saying that said, "Do you see the trees outside?" She said, we need to have trees that have growth to them and that we have planning for them so that they have leaves. Without leaves, they will die. So please, en la ciudad de los ciegos, el tuerto es rey. Make sure Mandela has the support for students and teachers.
The next speaker is Martin Dryden.
Thank you very much. Tonight I'm just simply going to echo some of the same comments that I put before the CRC meeting in person several weeks ago, and thank you for the opportunity. Right now, I would like to ask that the school district please consider letting the CRC present. I would like to give the board an opportunity to vote on their proposals. Everything that all the work has been out of exuberance. It started last year with research. It started with the promotion of the bond, the coming of the community together, and as much as it's nice to think and more, I do believe that the professionals have put together good recommendations, And there's been great community input, both at the CRC and also through the school board. So please, I support voting on a CRC proposal and allowing them to present at the next meeting. Beyond that, I really love the idea of reimagination. I think we've been doing this really for decades in Santa Fe Public Schools. In the parent community, also in the school community, we have models to draw the best ideas from. As a matter of fact, you can turn to Mandela for ideas about how to reimagine education, because as a worldwide successful initiative, they're wonderful ideas. This is already in practice, and in a new campus that gives our school board, it gives the CRC and members of the community to observe and bring forward the positive ideas that come from what Mandela does every single day. Finally, please engage with the city. I've heard there's a rift from many people. The city already imagines to 2100 and beyond, and they talk about it in our meetings. They are working on a Midtown campus, they're working in individual neighborhoods, they're working on parks around town. We can dovetail on all the investments they make on our community. I know that we have assets that are underperforming that could perhaps be sold off. Reimagining our portfolio and how to use the proceeds from the sale of this portfolio into schools that really meet our needs for the next 50 to 100 years. That's how we should be thinking. I believe that the Midtown was stated just this past week to be an educational hub. I look at that as an invitation that comes with infrastructure and dollars attached to it. So those are my comments, and again, thank you very much.
Time that perfectly. Next public forum speaker is Dave Forrester.
Good evening. My name is Dave Forrester. I'm a full-time Mandela teacher, long-time Santa Fe Public Schools employee, parent of a Santa Fe High junior, and a host parent to a 10th grade exchange student who attends Mandela. I come before you tonight, school board, to ask you to vote no on possible action item request to CRC. One of the upcoming facility recommendations from the CRC will be regarding future facilities for Mandela. By telling CRC to pause all facility recommendations, this has a negative impact for the future of Mandela. While I too understand the need for reimagining to happen in district, Mandela is the result of previous reimagining. In 2013, an IB school was imagined by the school board, and Mandela, which, with all of its numerous successes, is the result. But we haven't been allowed to actualize this previous imagining. That's what a new facility would allow us to do. Actualize us, don't reimagine us. You need to deeply consider the intended and unintended consequences to the Mandela community by pausing any recommendations regarding our facility, especially after numerous Santa Fe Public School employees have stood on our campus, often holding blueprints talking about our forever home, asking parents and staff to support Go Bonds so that we could garner funding for school expansion. And I can't even imagine the intended and unintended messaging to the CRC itself, a recommending body that is being asked not to make recommendations indefinitely. If we are transparent and collaborative in our process with our stakeholders, then we will garner trust and commitment to the process. That's a tagline from the reimagining section on the public schools website. A yes vote tonight on this action item will have a negative impact in the short term and medium term for our school facility, and is being done in the name of reimagining, yet no one from district came to discuss possible impacts, positive and negative, of tonight's vote with the Mandela community. That is not transparency. Vote no on tonight's CRC action item. Let them make a recommendation to you publicly and vote on it publicly. That is transparency. Thank you.
Our next speaker tonight is Lucas Robbins.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Lucas Robbins, and I'm the Student Council President at Mandela International Magnet School. I'm here today to speak to you about the importance of our school and request that you vote to decline the action item Request to CRC on near-term facility recommendations. To quote the SFPS Facilities Master Plan for 2021 through 26, traditional middle schools and high schools are underutilized while alternative schools continue to show an increase in demand. In the 2021-22 lottery cycle, there were 160 total waitlisted students in grades 7 through 9. The waitlist for 7th grade has become almost double the number of applicants that can be accepted. This demand for a rigorous, challenging, and door-opening school can't be met in the current building. To my understanding, MIMS is the only facility being considered by the CRC. This decision to have the CRC pause its work directly impacts our school and our student body, who have been hopeful for a new school since at least my 8th grade year. Last year, I personally campaigned for SFPS in regards to the GO bond. I spoke with more than 100 parents at our PTA barbecue, and I promised the same thing that had been promised to me and countless other students. If the bond passed, Mandela would be rebuilt and upsized. If this action item were to be approved, both my own and SFPS's promises will become illegitimate. I ask the board. I support the reimagination effort. However, I ask the board, what can be further reimagined about our school? According to Ms. Noble, in an opinion piece for the Santa Fe New Mexican, we should, quote, imagine the possibilities. What if Santa Fe could throw off all constraints and design a public education system to serve any kind of learner with inspired, well-paid, and creative staff working in beautiful spaces? We could strengthen academics, have strong elective programs, pursue summer and after-school activities to complement in-school time, with all of it supported by the larger community, end quote. The students at Mandela are some of the most motivated, diverse learners I've ever met. Our staff are excellent at supporting us and are some of the best teachers we could ask for. What's missing from Ms. Noble's dream is a beautiful space for us to learn and extracurricular opportunities that allow us to thrive. Neither of these can be achieved without a major expansion of our school, and neither of them may ever be achieved if the reimagination cycle of Mandela continues. Thank you for your time, and I hope you'll consider my request.
Our next speaker tonight is Charles Chapman.
Hello, my name is Charles Chapman. I'm a student at Mandela. Like my classmate Lucas, I'm here to advocate for Mandela by urging the members of this board to vote no on tonight's action plan. Though our school offers an amazing education, due to its small size, there are many things that it is unable to offer. Due to its small size, Mandela is unable to offer many extracurricular activities. Personally, I'm very interested in computer science, though I never really have the chance to study this in school, and need to instead find time outside of school to research in this field. Many students have topics like this that they need to find time out of their busy lives to research outside of school, and therefore don't usually get to research them. Another area where Mandela's small size prevents it from providing for its students in the best way possible is in higher level education. While typically from 7th through 10th grade, we don't have much of a choice in our schedule due to the many requirements by the IB curriculum. In 11th and 12th grade, we do get offered the chance to specialize in specific subjects by taking what's called higher level classes. Due to Mandela's size, though, we don't really have a lot of higher level classes. Specifically, I would love to study higher level math once I get to 11th and 12th grade, but that is not currently offered at Mandela. And there are many other subjects that are not offered as higher level classes as well. Overall, Mandela offers an amazing education, though its small size limits it from being at its full potential. This lack of options throughout middle school and high school leads many students to transfer to larger schools that do offer these opportunities. Last year, our graduating class was only 16 students, and this year won't be many more. By getting a larger school, we'll have more opportunities throughout our high school years to better prepare us for whatever field we choose to go into later in life. And not only would it benefit students already enrolled at Mandela, but it would also open up the opportunity to many more students as well. Thank you for your time, and I hope you vote no on tonight's action plan.
Next speaker tonight is Ian Olafson.
Hi. I'm a senior at Mandela International Magnet School and a part of the Student Council, and I just wanted to talk about the vote on allowing the CRC board to present. So the first thing I wanted to bring up was sports. So right now at Mandela, we don't offer high school sports, and the only middle school sports we offer are basketball and volleyball, and then we also have a cross-country team, but that has to go to another school because we don't have a cross-country field. If we were able to have the proper sports facilities on our sites, that would encourage more students to participate in a more active lifestyle, as well as allowing them to be able to focus more on their academics because they wouldn't have to travel to a different school in order to engage in these sports. The next thing I want to talk about is just the growth of Mandela. So I've been there for 4 years, and over that whole time, we've been told that we were going to be getting a new campus. And I've seen the school grow. In my freshman year at the school, we would barely fit into the building on days when it would rain, and now the cafeteria is completely full and the hallways are lined with students because we don't have enough space. When we have assemblies every couple weeks, the bleachers are always packed. You're sitting shoulder to shoulder to 2 other students, and there are people sitting in the stairs. Also, I wanted to talk about the lack of a proper theater and arts program. We don't have a theater or an amphitheater or of anything of that nature, so every year the theater program has to find a stage that's off campus and then has to pay for it, so that costs more money that we don't necessarily have in the budget. Or we have to do it on the cafeteria like we did last year, which is very challenging and it takes a lot more time and effort. This also prevents us from doing proper music concerts as we don't have a space that can hold the sound in any way that would make it presentable. The last thing is that the kitchens, we don't have any kitchens on site. This means that we have to transport food from another school. It gets there later, and it's always in a more deteriorated state than when it was made. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Christina Hazlitt.
My name is Krista Hazlitt. I am a parent of a freshman at Mandela, and I'm serving in my 4th year on the PTA board. And I'm here to echo the sentiments and thoughts of our previous speakers. I want to advocate for moving forward with a permanent home for Mandela sooner rather than later. The voters of Santa Fe approved a bond measure 1 year ago, and at this time we still don't even have a concrete vision in place for what that permanent home will look like. So I'm asking the board to not postpone any longer deciding what that permanent home should be for all of the reasons that have already been stated by our previous speakers. Thank you.
Next speaker is Paulo. I don't want to butcher the last name, so Paulo? I apologize.
Good evening. My name is Paulo Noronha, and I'm original from Mozambique. My daughter goes to Mandela. Most of my nephews and nieces, they went to international schools, so I'm in love with the program. I'm here to advocate for the permanent expansive home for Mandela. The last time I came here, we left with the impression that the board didn't want to build the school. Say it was going to be costly, there was no land, and from 2021, when the cost for this school project was made, and today, 2022, financially we fell short. There's no money, that's what we're told. So if you want to postpone this school, I can tell you it won't be any cheaper 5 years from now than it is today. So, and one more thing, God doesn't make any more land. So whatever land that's going to be found to build the school, it's right here and being depleted right now. You either secure it now or go build the school 10 miles from here. because there won't be any more land. There are more apartment complex being built, which means the school is competing with those projects. When you're building a school, I will think because Santa Fe is growing, most metropolis, they're growing. Build for 20, 30, 50 years from now. Don't build a building or school for 5, 10 years. It's going to run out of space again. And then you got to look for more land later on. There's a song in Brazil, I'm not from Brazil, but there's a song to say, when you're throwing a party, cook beans in a bigger pot. When somebody show up, add more water, right? Add more water. Each person who shows up, it means you are able to sustain whatever number of people show up because you got a bigger pot. But if you build a school for 300 students, you'll be needing to build school again. So I implore you to take this seriously. What are you going to be known for? Are you going to be tied to the school to say, oh, that board built this crappy school? Or are you going to be the board that took really chance to build something that's going to stay here for a very long time? So that's the only thing I had to say. Please consider those options for us. Thank you.
The last speaker signed up for public forum on the sheet is Raquel Baca Thompson.
Good evening, school board. My name is Raquel Baca Thompson, and my family and I are alumni of Mandela International Magnet School. 2 of my children graduated from the school, one in 2020 and one just this year in 2022. Both are on to college and thriving and doing very well, and we owe a lot of that, of their success to the school, and we thank you very much. Mandela is a school community that we care deeply about. My husband cares deeply about. My kids still call and ask about it, and they want to see it grow, and they were so excited when they heard that, you know, they were going to get a new facility. We were part of the school for 7 years. My son started when the school first started, and I was also the founding member of the PTA. So we care deeply about it, and we want to see the school grow and thrive. You know, it's great for the Santa Fe community. I grew up here. I wish I would have had a school like that when I was in middle school and high school. Anyway, I just ask that you please vote no on tonight's action plan, and please go forward as planned with the plans to give Mandela an appropriate school building where they can continue to thrive and grow, and definitely offer some athletic programs and all the other programs that they want to do. Thank you.
Board President, would you like me to read the emails, or do we want to put out the call for more in-person?
Why don't you read the emails, and then we'll go to the folks. If there's anybody, I'll be offering, if anybody who didn't sign up would like to address the board after Mr. Janarski reads the emails.
All right, the first email is from Nicole Richardson. The proposed members of the Reimagining Committee were as following. Steering committee structure, names to be submitted by the superintendent's office no later than October 17, 2022. Steering committee will meet from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. third Thursday of the month. Co-chairs, board president, and Reimagination chief strategist, staffed by select district staff. Each board member selects one representative from their districts, NEA Santa Fe president or designate, SFPS representative, PTA, PTO representatives, one per each level, elementary, middle, K-8, and high school. Santa Fe Principals Association representative, one for each level, elementary, middle, K-8, and high school. Santa Fe Community College president or designate, local tribal leadership representative, Superintendent's Equity and Diversity Council representative, one from each subcommittee. Governmental and other partners will be invited as needed. If one of the principles founding this committee was to address equity, why is there not a single position for representation of special education? The confirmed appointments seem very top-heavy, admin, and further marginalized a population that is often and has been historically marginalized by your district. I see Vivian Roybal is a paraprofessional. Where is representation and input from ancillary staff, special education teachers, programs support specialists, etc.? Our next email is from Margot Gustina. Dear SFPS school board members, do not delay finding a permanent and appropriate home for one of Santa Fe's most sought-after secondary schools, Mandela International Magnet School. I have 2 children at MIMS, one about to graduate and one just beginning. The faculty and students are striving in a difficult-to-work-with environment, one that breaks, if not the latter, the spirit of the IDEA laws. Myself and the majority of voters in our school district voted to pay for this new home. It breaks your duties of loyalty and care to not see through the mandate of the voters you represent. Keep your word and act as the voters have mandated. Find a permanent home for Mandela. Thank you for your service. The next comment is from Tony Gerlichs. I'm sorry to be out of town and cannot appear in person. As the founder of Mandela International Magnet School, I rise to urge the board to move forward with the CRC's request to find a permanent building site for Mandela. Those initial years of MIMS were inspiring and challenging, to say the least. In addition to creating SFPS's first and only IB school, which has now demonstrated education that rivals other world-class IB schools under the inspired leadership of Randy Grillo. The school had to contend with substandard infrastructure while sharing facilities with DeVargas Middle School in the first 3 years. Later, we upgraded to an old elementary school where it currently lives. Throughout its evolution, MIMS has asked for and thoroughly deserved an external and internal facility that warrants the world-class education it provides and that allows for expansion. I urge you to honor the voters' bond election decision of 2021 to upgrade the substandard building in which MIMS lives and not delay that work. The next comment is from Jeff Hinkerson. Dear SFPS Board, the Mandela staff, CRC Committee, and the SFPS Facilities Department have all been working hard over the past 7 years to get Mandela into a permanent school. Please honor the voted for go bond in 2021 and move forward with the CRC's request to find a permanent building site for Mandela International Magnet School. Thank you for your time. The next comment is from Yvonne Hinkerson. Dear SFPS Board, I request that the board move forward with the CRC's request to find a permanent building site for Mandela. The staff and students deserve better. Voters approved upgrades to Santa Fe schools, and it's past time to provide facilities that equip and prepare kids for the future. Further delays could potentially harm the education quality needed, especially for a unique school like Mandela that has been on a lengthy wait list. I have 2 children at Mandela, and I serve on the PTA. Thank you. The last comment is from Kate Mitchell. Hello, board members and Superintendent Chavez. I am writing as a parent of 2 children, both of whom started Mandela in 7th grade. One of those children has now graduated and gone off to college, and one is currently a junior at Mandela. We became a part of this school community 7 years ago when Mandela was housed in a shared building at DeVargas Middle School. Since then, the district's facilities department has offered up a number of partial renovations and temporary fixes, as well as a promise of a sparkling rebuild worthy of all of this well-respected, successful school. We have been fighting since day one for a proper facility to support and inspire the school staff, teachers, and students. As recently as November 2021, we rallied the Santa Fe community to get out there and vote for a bond measure in which we were promised $24 million to make our remodel dream a reality. The bond passed and actual construction plans were shared with our school community. Much to my surprise, with very little notice before tonight's school board meeting, I learned that SFPS wants to reimagine its current facility plans, of which Mandela is a part. This likely means that Mandela's new home will have to wait another few years before construction can even begin. As a parent, I find this disheartening, not to mention borderline unethical, to suggest that those CRC plans for Mandela should be put on hold. This is a successful SFPS school which is not under-enrolled. In fact, there is an extensive wait list of students eager to attend. In the interest of supporting the work that's already been done by the CRC, not to mention respecting the voters who voted yes to the bond measure, I urge you to honor the bond measure's passage and proceed with the existing timeline and plans to give Mandela the school campus we deserve. Please vote no to request that the CRC table its near-term facility recommendations. And should SFPS feel compelled to reimagine its current facilities, they should stay true to its promise to give Mandela a new home sooner than later. It's been 7 years of waiting already. Thank you.
And that concludes all public forum submissions that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Janarski. Is there anybody else who didn't get a chance to sign up who would like to address the board? Please line up if you would. And Cody, however you want to handle it in terms of names and notes, but most of all, if you would just come forward one by one and tell us your name and go ahead.
Yep, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sari Pickering, and I'm a teacher at Mandela International Magnet School. If I'm looking familiar, it's because you might have seen a photo of me in the superintendent's bulletin advertising for parent-teacher conferences. But what that photo does not capture, it was taken the first week of school, is the temperature of my classroom at the end of the school day. As Charlie and Ian can attest, the end of the school day in August was a brutal time in my class. It was a constant fight, and big credit to the maintenance workers for coming time and time again, trying to get my air conditioning to work. But it was hot, and that makes it really hard to learn. And then last week we come in really cold, the temperature dropped, and it's freezing. And Lucas can attest to that. It was a cold morning, right? When your hands are frozen, it's hard to write. I teach writing and reading. And so I just want to say that my students deserve a place where it's comfortable to learn, where they're not too hot or too cold. That's a basic need. And those needs are not being met in our current facility. So please vote no. Thank you.
Hello, members of the board, superintendent, staff. Thank you for hearing us out tonight. My name is Lauren Whitehurst. I have been a teacher in Santa Fe Public Schools at Capitol High School for a number of years, and I'm a parent of students in the district. My son is a 9th grader at Mandela, and we feel very lucky to be at that institution. We have relatives that are in Germany this year who are enrolling in an IB school there. And having the opportunity and the affirmation of knowing that what our kids are learning here is truly recognized and on par with what their peers are learning internationally is an enormous gift for Santa Fe. And there's not much more I can say that the eloquent speakers who have come before me have said and about the value of Mandela, the diversity and high level of its learning program, its leadership, and the fact that everyone from the founder of the school to its current students is a real statement on the effect of that school here as it has been in its sort of scrappy early existence. And if that is the way it is now, imagine what it could be if it had proper facilities. It is an innovative place in that, like I said, it cannot be overstated. My focus is to underscore that as I understand it, the work that's been done by the CRC has been ongoing for 7 years. And from the perspective of honoring the time, expertise, and the constituencies that voted for the GO bond for $24 million allocation toward the improvement of Mandela is worth saying in its specifics right now. I think one of the important roles of any elected board and community leaders, and perhaps especially in the arena of education, is to acknowledge the importance of keeping our word and keeping the word to the voters and to our students. And if this board is honoring the wishes of the community who voted for 24 million, excuse me, to go to Mandela, then that's an important thing to honor, as well as the time and expertise that has been put into this point, and to delay it another 4 years seems disrespectful to the votes that we made as parents, students, and taxpayers. Thank you.
Just introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Bodie Lewis. I'm a sophomore at Mandela, and I just came from Santa Fe High cross-country practice because we don't have cross-country at Mandela. And I just want to reiterate what my peers and neighbors and teachers have all been saying, and just that Mandela is a gem of a school, fostering students that produce exactly the kind of thinking and kindness that the world needs right now to solve all these problems that are existing in our world. And so vote no on tonight's action plan and extend the opportunity to more students in the district to become like engaged in learning and continue their drive to learn. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Drew Weaver. I am a teacher at Mandela, and I'll sort of, from the teacher perspective, reiterate what Sari Pickering said. In any type of education class that any teacher takes, they talk a lot about sort of the messages that students internalize, and in particular the messages that students internalize regardless of what we say. So I look at the environment around Mandela, and it's a testament to our students that they're as happy, they're as committed as they are, because the actual physical environment's not doing it. Ian was there, I think, when we had to pull like rat traps and mice out of my classroom. I think Raquel's daughter did extended essay in my room when it was 100 degrees because, like Miss Pickering's, it wasn't working. You guys walk every single day across those prairie dog holes with that little small blacktop that's fading. And just for our students, thinking about kind of what message they're internalizing from that, I just think they deserve to have a new school, and I don't think they deserve to wait. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Sandra Garcia. I have two daughters at Mandela, one in 12th grade and the other one in 10th grade. I'm coming on behalf of Mandela because when your daughter called you and asked you if you have some food at home because they ran out of food, and that's sad in this country. When my daughter says, I was eating in the classroom because the food came late. There's really, you can say what the school is lacking of, but this is, I'm testifying of experiences. We don't, when I talk to the ladies in the cafeteria, they say the gas stove doesn't work. The refrigerator, they have a vacuum refrigerator that is just for storage. This is sad. We are in a country that helps another countries, and it's sad. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Annie Humberson, and I currently serve as the PTA president at Mandela International Magnet School. 20-something years ago, I was part of an IB program. I went on to become a collegiate athlete at UNM on the ski team. After that, I achieved 5 degrees, including a master's degree. I'm now in public health in the medical sector. I have learned through an IB curriculum, education, what it takes to develop trust and transparency. In a world that we live in, right now, there is no trust and there is no transparency. Because I did receive that education, it gave me the integrity to proceed education in all different avenues. I encourage you to continue the process of supporting Mandela and supporting what we embarked on years ago to give us a permanent home. Look at these students. You heard them speak. This doesn't just come because there's not integrity, and there's not passion, and there's not trust. So please, follow through with what is intended and let us have a permanent home. Thank you.
And I think that concludes public forum.
Thank you, Mr. Janarski. And thank you all for speaking and coming to talk to us. Really appreciate it. We will move on to Roman numeral 4 on our agenda, our union update. And President Grace Mayer from NEA Santa Fe is here. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Grace Mayer, NEA Santa Fe president and art teacher at Milagro Middle School. I want to share with the board and our NEA New Mexico legislative policy priorities through our member survey. So when I was here over a month ago, I talked about some of the questions on our survey that went out to all our members throughout the state. But this particular survey, we pulled all our Santa Fe public school information. And so if you go to the next slide, we had 316 responses from educators in Santa Fe Public Schools. 62% are NEA, Santa Fe NEA New Mexico members. 74% are certified teachers. 50% have been in education, the education profession for more than 15 years, which we often talk about our retiring workforce. And we have some of the most experienced, not just in age, but in their profession, working with our students. So that is pretty close to, you know, our numbers throughout the state in terms of, you know, in comparison to other districts who have much younger workforce. In Santa Fe, we have significantly even higher than 50% of that workforce. 75% are women, 52% are white, 33% self-identified as Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, Latina, Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx. 3% marked multicultural, 1% identified as Native American. The next slide. So ranked priority areas. Santa Fe respondents ranked the following issue areas identified in our survey, NEA New Mexico 2023 Legislative and Policy Priorities document in order of priority. 1, educator working conditions and student learning environments, planning time, class size, and adequate staffing. 2, educator retention, healthcare, and wages sort of rose to the top. Number 3, vision for the future, community schools, extended learning time, and early childhood education. 4 was educator voice, COVID. So these were mostly writing comments. COVID relief and mental and behavioral health for our students and our staff sort of rose to the surface. I'm going to revisit educator working conditions and student learning environment and talk about the response. Santa Fe respondents support paid uninterrupted planning time, 97% of those surveyed. Smaller class sizes, 92%. Increased health services staffing, 90%. Increased special education staffing, 89%. Increased art, music, PE, library staffing, 87%. And increased bilingual education staffing, 76%. 78% of Santa Fe respondents received paid planning time during the day. Of those, this is what they reported. 8% received less than 50 minutes per week. 17% received 50 to 100 minutes per week. 12% received 100 to 200 minutes per week. 13% 200 to 249. 15 250 minutes per week, and 36% received more than 250 per week. In our CBA, our document, most of our full-time, and what we've negotiated with the district is that our prep time is 5 hours per week for a full-time employee, and then less as they are, if they're a 0.6 or a 0.4, they get less time. However, that's been problematic for our district for many years. And we've tried to come up with some creative ways this year in terms of our start and end times and our early release on Wednesday that would provide for our secondary educators more time for collaboration time and preparation time. So that first hour of the early release on Wednesday and Friday for our elementary, but that's been in place for years, should be at each site, the first hour is preparation time. And then after that, there could be some PDs or some other required time. Again, that's not reflected in some of the responses that we've received and in the reality of planning out this model and having this model around for elementary school for a while as well. So I want to read thoughts from a Santa Fe educator. Though we are scheduled to receive 55 minutes of prep time Monday through Thursday and time from 1 to 3:10 on Fridays, which isn't entirely accurate. It's an hour of that time. We have grade level PLCs, mandated district meetings, letters, trainings, IEPs, etc. that cut drastically into our planning time. Also, the new PLC planning form and new lesson planning form take another 2 hours per week. This is on top of planning because we fill these out after we plan with our PLC group. It's way too much. That has been a statement we've been hearing from our members through these surveys for a while. We're certainly invested in working on it and trying to figure out how to get the appropriate amount of time for our staff to feel successful in presenting the curriculum to our students. It's an ongoing effort, and I think that we need to really start to pay attention to what's happening in that area so that we can retain, especially a lot of the new educators that we need to replace some of our our retiring population. Sorry, it's teachers out there and educators out there. Okay, I don't usually have people here, so I'm a little nervous. I just want you to know, you're kind of like all throwing me off. I'm like, but I'll continue. I'll try, but then I got you guys. Okay, so educator retention. Nearly 100% of Santa Fe respondents support educator wage increases to improve recruitment and retention. We especially want to bring up a little bit about our ESPs. Those are, our secretaries, our mechanics, our bus drivers, our EAs, educational assistants in early childhood, and also our EBAs, which are our health professionals assistants in those, a lot of different grade levels, but primarily the younger grades. Those educators received the minimum of a $15 wage increase that was mandated. Our EBAs received $16.50 an hour, which is higher than that mandate. However, we still have extreme vacancies in those categories, and many of those are essential to the operation of especially a special ed, self-contained classroom or any other classroom. So we really need to look at how do we retain those workers in terms of those increases in salaries. Oftentimes our legislature only refers to teachers, not educators, doesn't really understand sort of that educators are involved in all these aspects in all these different ways, but they're just called something other than a teacher. So, retention also in terms of covering at least 80% of our health insurance premium costs. So we will be and have been discussing, an initiative by NEA New Mexico, the 80-20 campaign, which to help to get support so that the state will cover the cost of all educators regardless of their position and how much money they make, 80%, cover 80% of those insurance costs. So thoughts from a Santa Fe educator. Low pay versus high cost of living is a crucial reason why many educators leave the profession. The pay needs to be more equal to other school systems in other states where education is a priority. I took a $30,000 pay cut to teach in Santa Fe. I love teaching in New Mexico with all my heart, But the pay scale doesn't even compare to states like Pennsylvania, where I came from, where educators are highly respected and the salaries are competitive. Higher salaries will increase the opportunity for districts across New Mexico to attract highly qualified teachers. Things are a bit better this year with the new bump in the pay scale. However, it is still almost impossible for a young teacher or an experienced teacher to buy a home in places like Santa Fe. Also, better salaries will encourage college students to become teachers and join our beautiful profession. We've been working with the superintendent and the board discussing this issue about how do we provide maybe teacherage or other type of housing to our educators in our district. We certainly, know that in order for us to attract people here, they need to be able to live in the community that they work in, and that is just, an effort we need to keep pushing with the city, with the state, and hopefully we can maybe manage some of that ourselves, like we did with the child care center for our employees, which we're really proud of, and hopefully we can maintain, which certainly will help with recruitment and retention. And it really did bring back educators that had left because they felt they couldn't take care of their child and pay that kind of cost and work full time. So we did pull some educators back. So it was a success and will probably be, a model for a lot of other districts around the state and the country, hopefully. And I hope that we work to figure out a housing situation for our educators that will be a model for the state and the country. I think we can do that in our reimagining plan. Okay, next one, the educator voice. Only 20% of Santa Fe respondents say their school has implemented new COVID safety policies this school year. 36% of Santa Fe respondents believe their school's current measures are sufficient to keep educators, students, and communities safe. 35% believe current measures are not sufficient, so we're mixed here with the respondents. 84% of Santa Fe respondents believe their school district should survey educators and integrate their feedback and plans to use American Rescue Plan ESSER federal funds. 83% of Santa Fe respondents support the PED reallocating unused K-5 plus program funds to bolster mental health support services for students in response to COVID. And most of them, respondents, said that they want that now and this year. And obviously, we're going to push for that. However, it's been challenging to get those resources to the districts directly. Thoughts from the Santa Fe Public School educator. Santa Fe Public Schools has poured pandemic money into an expensive transition to standards-based grading, a move that is frustrating to a majority of teachers in the building. This is a little misguided, but I'm going to read it anyway because I want you guys to hear, everything moved so fast in the last 2 years that there's a learning curve for employees to understand how things worked. Because oftentimes someone will come to me and say, did you know whatever? And I'm like, yes, I bargained it. And it's like, yes, we tried to get the information out, or we tried to, survey members, figure out how to get this to work to everybody's advantage. But, we do the best we can, and with all these moving parts, and I think last year and the previous year, it was like daily the conversation about MOUs, like a memorandum of understanding to deal with this issue, a new change from the PED, a new change from this policy and procedure. How do we keep kids and employees safe? And so it's been a lot of work, and it's hard to explain every interaction and why we felt we went in that direction. But I have to tell you, we did the best we could, and we tried to, think about every situation and how to keep people safe and how to put forward an education that was going to be valuable to our students and make it through a really challenging time, which we're still dealing with. So a move that is frustrating to the majority of teachers in my building will lower expectations on students and move and a move that has enriched private corporate consulting firms. District money instead should go into updating our buildings and to hiring more counselors and personnel to follow up on rampant truancy. So there has been resources put into trying to, rein in rampant truancy. We have truancy, I don't think they're, what are they called now?
Attendance coaches.
Sorry, not truancy. Attendance coaches, who I know work really hard, and they talk to families. They try to figure out how to get students back in the classroom. We have them going to multiple buildings, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. They do home visits. They contact social services to get the families connected with things that they need. So we have been. As a district, and this is, a nod to our superintendent, Chavez, for really saying, okay, extended learning can be, we can have a discussion about that when we figure out why our kids aren't coming to school and what's going on. And a lot of that has to do with the needs. We're in a high poverty state, and a lot of people tend to dismiss those I can't say the word, statistics in Santa Fe because we're in the capital city. And we have a majority of our students unfortunately do live in poverty, and we have to recognize that their access to health care and things that will make their situations a little easier are hard pressed at this point, especially access to appropriate mental health care as well. Okay, hot topics. Affordable housing. We discussed a little. 82% live in the district. 56% do not have access to affordable housing, which is a huge number, but I don't think unfamiliar to most of us. 92% know of other educators struggling with the cost of housing. 90% have worked with students experiencing homelessness. And that's a really, that's a significant thing that I think we need to acknowledge. Many of our students are homeless at different ages, and we need to really start to invest in our programs like Adelante that work with those families in those situations. But we also have an increasing number of middle school students that are homeless. And we have to start addressing that. What does that mean? Oftentimes, we think of homeless youth as young kids with a parent. We don't have that anymore. We have new situations where we have young adults from 12 to 18 that don't have a place to be. And oftentimes they come around our schools and they, they try to ask people that have helped them before. And I just think that as a community, we need to start addressing how we can, transition these kids into safe environments so that they're not, so that they, can function at school and also have a place that they feel safe and comfortable in the evenings. Child care, 14% have a child under 5 years of age. 79% believe other districts should offer affordable child care centers for school employees like that implemented by Santa Fe Public Schools. So I put that in there because that was on our state survey. So some other hot topics. Educator-directed professional development. 72% support educators being able to identify their own professional development needs, including using micro-credentials rather than being required to attend district-directed PD sessions. District-managed evaluations. And I think we should really start to look into this because our CBA has an evaluation process that we approved. The board approved, the district approved, and through various sort of I guess, I don't know how this happened, but every district sort of fell victim to the Scandera error of these evaluations, which were initially punitive. But even though we've changed and move away from some of those PET evaluations that are punitive, I think that districts need to take local control of those evaluations. And we should stop, wasting a lot of our principals' time and a lot of our educators' time by, uploading documents to the PED that they're never going to see. And then they're not really interested in seeing. What we're interested in doing is helping educators with their practice in the classroom. And so I think the best people to do that are the people that work for the district in collaboration with the educators who know the kind of help that they need. And so having the PED sort of influence that, I think we should start taking on as a district. I think that they're out of their lane in a lot of that, because we do have local control over that contract, and we have a different procedure that we've had for years. Okay, to ensure evaluations are managed in district as required by law. And so we do have the law behind us. Okay, so we asked some questions about gun safety and gun violence in our schools on a scale of 1 to 10. Did you do, 1, extremely safe, in your school in particular, to 5, which is extremely unsafe. So safety of school site for gun violence was sort of in the middle. Effectiveness of safety drills, again, kind of in the middle. And the degree to which underlying causes of gun violence are being addressed. And that's significantly higher, and I think we all know that we don't really have the resources and counselors and other health professionals right now to address a lot of the situation that leads to gun violence, or just violence in general, or some of our other issues that we're dealing with. So hopefully this gives you some information about the pulse of our district and what our educators are feeling and thinking. So that is all. I'm sorry that's a little longer than usual, but.
We hadn't seen you in a little while. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Vice President Bose.
Thank you. Ms. Mayor, I think one of the important pages of your presentation was skipped, and the vision of the future slide. I wanted to make sure that you mentioned that, since we are in the process of early voting, and thought you might want to mention that before everyone votes.
Clearly I didn't print that one. Okay, so a vision for the future, 82% of Santa Fe respondents support the land grant permanent ballot measure that would improve access to funds for public schools. So Amendment 1 is on your ballot. It's on the back of the ballot. It's a very large ballot. I voted the other day. But it only took like 5 minutes at the county clerk's office. 78% of Santa Fe respondents believe there should be more funding for community schools to serve as a hub of the community, provide wraparound services, and advance collaborative leadership practices. And thoughts from Santa Fe educators. ELT curriculum and programming should be designed by educators at the school based on students' interests and needs. Let the professionals design and implement the programs and pay us our hourly rates to do it. The all or nothing aspect of extended learning time prohibits students, families, and educators from participating in this option. This is wrong and short-sighted. It is ridiculous that we are sitting on all that money when we are failing our communities. What is the point of saving that money for future generations if the generations are suffering, which they are? They are not supported now. So I think we, as a community, understood that the extended learning time wasn't really working for us in the way it is pushed out, that all or nothing, every school, every child has to participate in programming in a particular way for us to be reimbursed for programming is not is not realistic. It's never going to happen. There's never going to be 100% of the staff that agrees on everything, or 100% of the parent community. And I was part of the summer programming where we had all different types of programming that were well attended, and I think that is where we should be, that the state should honor their commitment to extended learning by giving the resources directly to the school districts so that the community can make those decisions and educators can participate in whatever way they want. Parents can enroll their children in programs they feel that they will benefit from. And so thank you for telling me about that. Because you're right, that's probably the most important thing.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And here we go, yay. And we get to say vote yes on constitutional amendment number 1. I get to say that anyway, please. Okay, moving on to Roman numeral 5, board announcements and follow-up. Are there any announcements from the board at this time?
Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Thank you. Members of the board, superintendent, I just wanted to say a quick thank you for all the vaccine clinics taking place in the schools right now. I know in El Dorado this afternoon, where 2 of my 3 children attend, they were busy all day and still had people waiting in line towards the end of the day. So I'm really glad that that's being offered to our students and our communities. It's so easy to do, and please make sure you participate if you're interested. Thank you. Oh, wait, one more topic on that. If there are shot clinics in the future, it would be really wonderful. I did hear from some parents, the kids have side effects after the shots, and they're like, oh, I don't want to do it in the middle of the week. It would be great if those could be done on Fridays so that we're not having additional absences from side effects from the vaccines. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board announcements? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to Roman numeral 6, superintendent announcements and follow-up. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board. A lot of wonderful announcements tonight. So at our last meeting, we were able to celebrate Tara Hughes as being the Santa Fe Public Schools Teacher of the Year. Well, yeah. Tonight, we are thrilled to welcome her back, but this time as the 2023 New Mexico Teacher of the Year. So, yes. We were at Nye Early Childhood Center yesterday, and Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham was there, New Mexico Secretary of Education Dr. Kurt Steinhaus, Cabinet Secretary for Early Childhood Education, Elizabeth Groginski, and many others, including her family on Zoom, which surprised her with this honor. I wish everyone could have seen the look on her face when she was surprised. Even surprised me because we thought we blew it when Secretary Steinhaus went to the hallway. She is the first early childhood teacher to ever receive this award, so it's breaking new ground. Joining in on Wednesday's excitement was Tara's 4-year-old pre-K students. And so that was very exciting. Tara is an outstanding teacher who places inclusion at the forefront and will be a wonderful teacher ambassador for the state of New Mexico. She will also be entered into the National Teacher of the Year award pool, and so I do have to fill out some paperwork on that as well. But don't just take my word for it. Tonight we're joined by her colleagues here in the audience, but also as we listen to our students share their love and excitement for her teacher. So Mr. Donarski, we have a little video prepared for you.
Hi, Miss Tara. I remember you from pre-K.
Tara, in 2 words, would be exceptional and humble. She's fabulous, and I definitely have learned a ton from her.
Miss Tara taught me my ABCs. I like playing with Miss Tara. She was a very nice teacher. She taught me a lot of stuff. She was very fun. I'd say that she helped me a lot she gave me a big push in school. She's one of the reasons that I'm better in school here. I like Miss Tara. Miss Tara is the best and kind.
Rock star.
Tara, in 2 words, is inclusive and real. I don't think 2 words are enough to describe her. She's a truly blessing for our family. What she does every day at her classroom is pure magic. Thank you, Miss Tara.
She has a strong personality, but at the same time, she's very kind and sweet with the kids. So she showed me how we need handling the kids when they are hard time or they have a hard day.
Tara is one of the most thoughtful and intentional teachers I have ever worked with.
Miss Tara is genuine and authentic, and she truly loves and accepts all children in her classroom.
Tara is committed and determined to be the best.
She lets us play at sentence.
I am a mother of a student who had Tara Hughes in pre-K in the inclusion classroom, and I still get emotional because she helped him so much. She made his life so much better. She taught him so much about being a student in school, how to sit, how to be quiet, how to be calm, how to calm himself, how to listen, and to this day it carries through to everything that he does. I am eternally grateful for everything that Tara Hughes did for my son at Nye.
Miss Tara is a leader. She's an advocate for all. To know her is to love her.
Thank you, because whenever, we didn't know how to build something with the Lego, you bend it down to help us build that thing. And whenever I got bullied, you would stand up for me and help me with that thing by telling him to stop. And thank you for that.
Miss Tara is creative and inspiring.
I want to join the celebration as everybody expresses their appreciation to you for the way you bring reading and books and learning to life. So Miss Tara, keep rocking in your school shoes. Miss Tara, keep rocking in your school shoes. Miss Tara, keep rocking in your school shoes.
She helped me build a bachelor dedo. He taught me a bunch of stuff, and now I'm kind of using it.
When I think of Miss Tara, I think she stands out because she's the most compassionate educator I had ever met. And also, she's so reflective. She always wants to learn more to serve better her students. And the way she cares for her students is just extraordinary.
So if you can stand up, Ms. Tara, and congratulations once again. And following that up, we also have another teacher in the news. Tamara Quintana, special education teacher at Kearney Elementary School, has been selected to receive a prestigious National Liberty Museum State Farm Teacher as a Hero Award. Tamara, the lead teacher for both upper and lower grade high school needs self-contained classes, will be honored at the 2022 Teacher as a Hero Award ceremony in Pennsylvania in December for leveraging excellence in teaching to make a difference in the students' lives. So again, we keep getting these honors and awards, so want to say great job and continue to work hard. And also, Tamara, I hope you're listening. Congratulations to you as well. And as President Mayer mentioned, I think she left, but it's official. Santa Fe Public Schools Early Childhood Center, and Dr. Aswada, please stand up so everybody can see you as well, because she was the mastermind behind our child care facility. Is now fully licensed by the state of New Mexico, and it is currently the only district-operated child care center in the state of New Mexico. We got our ECC initial license on October 14th. This means that we can ask the Early Childhood Education and Care Department for reimbursement for those who qualify. The governor announced in April that families earning up to 400% of the federal poverty level qualify for free child care with no copay. And what that means for Santa Fe Public Schools is that a significant percentage of our families registered in the ECC will qualify for reimbursement, and thus we can sustain the program. Also being licensed means that we can apply for grants available through the ECECD. For example, we will apply for the competitive pay grant to increase the employee salaries of the child care facility by as much as $3. And in speaking with Elizabeth Gruginski, Cabinet Secretary for Early Childhood Education yesterday, I learned that there are 2 other districts in the state now exploring this type of program. She also said there are available funds to support operation of this facility, which currently has 40 students enrolled, and we have a capacity of 44. The wait list is in the 2-year-old classroom. So the vacancies are, if I remember correctly, 3-year-old? Yep, 3-year-old. And so we'll encourage our employees to continue to apply and try to get in this program. Most of our employees are using this service, but also our goal was 70% for teachers, and we're currently at 65% of teachers using this service. So again, want to thank you. You were the one, as I tell everybody, my job was easy. I would just say yes or no when you would ask me, but you are the one, along with your team, to really get this in place and move forward. So I want to thank you as well. Last week, I was able to present to the Navajo Nation at the Fall 22 Tribal Consultation in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Many thanks to Nancy Davis, our Director of Native American Student Services, for the incredible work her and her staff are doing for our Native American students. We shared at the Tribal Consultation information on our district, including summer programming, standards-based instruction and grading, our child care facility, the way we leveraged ESSER 3 and the recognition we received from the White House, also work-based learning initiatives, and also the Martinez-Yazzie efforts, including hiring staff to direct student services, and also the needs assessment and strategic plan. We see many more opportunities to collaborate with the Navajo Nation. They asked us to be ambassadors and working with other districts that need the support. So I want to recognize Nancy Davis and her staff and all the efforts of our school board in identifying the needs of these students, but also all the work that we know lies ahead of us. So I want to thank you guys all as well. And as we've seen on social media, our Santa Fe High Demon Marching Band placed second. They placed second at the New Mexico Pageant of Bands in Rio Rancho on Saturday, October 22nd, competing against other marching bands from across the state. This was the first time a band from Santa Fe has competed in the large division since 1984. Yeah. Zeb Ballin, band director, said, "Our band placed second and we won Best Soloist." So congratulations to Maya Harris, who also placed first in the musicianship and first in the general effect. The band earned strong scores in every caption, including color guard and percussion. but all three of these students had never marched before this year. So I want to congratulate Santa Fe High and Zeb as leading the resurgence of this band program. So I want to say congratulations. Just two more quick ones. The K through 12 lottery opens on November 1st, so very important date. November 1st, the lottery opens. The 23-24 K-12 lottery opens on November 1st, providing parents with a 3-month window to submit their interzone transfer requests. All schools are part of the lottery, including Mandela and ECO, which is Early College Opportunities. Parents can submit the request through January 31st, 2023. The deadline is 11:59 that evening. And then lastly, as President Mayor mentioned about their priorities, NEA New Mexico and NEA Santa Fe, just want to remind the board I will work with you individually, and please start thinking of legislative priorities as we will start meeting with our delegation for a legislative breakfast in November, but also working with our staff to also bring forward recommendations. So just kind of think about some of those items, and then we'll meet individually to bring that back forward in November. So that does conclude my announcements. I want to say thank you and congratulations to everybody who we mentioned.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the board on the superintendent's announcements? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our action items on Roman numeral 7. We'll start with the consent agenda, items 1 through 6. Are there any questions or any items to be considered individually? And if not, is there a motion?
Madam President.
Go ahead, Board Member Beta.
Move for approval.
Thank you very much. I'll go ahead. Okay.
No, you
No,
go ahead.
no, you. Secretary Anderson with the second. I didn't even say it. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we have approved the consent agenda. Moving on to action item B, the Art Smart New Mexico donation. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. And with us to introduce us to the Art Smart initiative for this evening is Deputy Superintendent Vanessa Romero.
President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, we have Miss Christina Gonzalez here too to discuss the donation.
And Ms. Gonzalez, can you just, for the record, announce your title and position?
Yes, Superintendent Chavez, Board President Noble, members of the board. I'm just here really briefly. I didn't prepare anything, but I'm just here briefly to recognize and thank Art Smart New Mexico, our local nonprofit that is one of our most significant contributors, donors to this program, to our visual arts programs. And if I can introduce you all, I'm going to step away. If you wouldn't mind saying a word about your organization. And I think many of you probably recognize Amy Suma, who was in my position as Arts Education Coordinator for Santa Fe Public Schools. Amy was here for many years. So if you don't mind, I'll just turn it over quickly to her and say thank you.
Taking over. Actually, here is our Art Smart Board President Extraordinaire, Jacob Martinez.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Jacob Martinez. Most of you probably don't know this. Tiger does. I went to Sweeney Elementary, and I grew up on the south side, so that is one of the schools that we service. We serve a lot of schools, but that's kind of near and dear to my heart. All the schools, but that's one especially because it's a Title I school, and I grew up on the south side. And I've been on the board for 6 years now. I just got voted in as president, and we have a great board. We have a great staff. Sarah Mandela there, who's excellent to work with. And we've been helping the public schools and working with them for over 30 years. So it's a really good program. I've been able to see firsthand through a lot of the painted plate project, where we have the fifth graders that paint plates, and they're able to take one of their plates home with them, and we're able to sell them. And some of these plates, I'll tell you, they're just as good as some of the artists that we have, visiting artists that we have, and they're amazing to see the creativity, and they get a kick to see that their plate sold for $600 or $700, and it makes a difference in their life. We also have a great visiting artist program that we've done, and we do really well at that. So I just want to invite you all to be active in our events. We're having a spring gala for the community and the teachers. I saw some of you guys there this past year, so we'd like to see you there again. We're having a fall art gala on November 12th at Bishop's Lodge. We haven't done fundraisers because of COVID for a couple of years, so we want it to be really special. We want to see people in the community there. We're having artists fly in. We're having people that are flying in to bid on art, but I want it to be part of the community and to see teachers and parents there. So if you know anybody, if anybody's invited, let us know. We can, our website is artsmartnm.org. We can help you with the tickets, getting tickets, and it's going to be great food, a lot of fun, so we hope to see you at all the events. And on behalf of the staff and the board, we're happy to present the check to the public schools and to strengthen our relationship with Christina and working with you all. So thank you so much.
For how much?
For $40,000.
Yes.
So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and this money will go towards, it goes right into the classrooms for teachers to have visiting artists that come in that can help them with all the different, there's just so many different ways that art can be taught and that the kids can learn from the new cultural experiences from artists from the community. It also pays for art supplies, so.
Thank you very much, and thanks for being here. And if I read this correctly, we both need to take action, I guess, to accept the donation, but there was also a note about taking a photo with your somewhat oversized check there. So I'll go ahead and move approval that we move approval of the Art Smart New Mexico donation to make it official.
I will second that.
Thank you, Vice President Brose. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, let's take a photo. Thank you. And thank you so much for the donation and for the support of art in our schools. Really appreciate that. That's often the best part.
And may I add something,
Please, go
President
ahead.
Noble? Ms. Gonzalez, along with Deputy Superintendent Romero, we haven't made this announcement, but this is, I think, a timely announcement to just kind of put out there is we've been working with a local owner of a hotel to utilize his space that's no longer being used as a gallery, art gallery for students to sell their work. It's going to be no cost to the district, no cost to the students, so it's a great way for them to promote all the great products. And we have some in our lobby as well, but also to sell to the community and whoever wants to go through that area and buy some. So we'll come back with a better announcement at a future date just to give you more details.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Congratulations. Okay, action item C, Resolution 2022-2023-5, Santa Fe Public Schools, New Mexico Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Project Agreement. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble. With us tonight is our Executive Director of Facilities, Mr. Gabe Romero.
Good evening. Good evening, Superintendent, Board President, Board members. Earlier this year, we applied with Volkswagen Mitigation Trust in order to receive some electrified buses, and we were hoping to get one out of it. In fact, we were awarded the funding to support 3 buses, which is like $1.19 million is what that costs us. So we're very fortunate, we're very grateful with the efforts with our team, and also for the gratitude and the ability of the district to take on this. As part of this, we have an agreement with the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust project agreement that requires we assign a couple of people some signatory responsibilities and also some response responsibilities. So if I may, I can just kind of give you an idea from what's on the cover sheet, what we're considering this evening. So in order to proceed with the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Award for the replacement of 3 old diesel-fueled buses, to replace those with 3 brand-new zero-emission electrified buses, we need a resolution from the governing body to resolve that certain individuals have signatory authority and authority to respond to the New Mexico Environment Department. So we ask that you approve this resolution. I don't know if it's required that I read it. I can do that also, but that you approve the resolution so that we can move forward with this project and mitigation trust agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Questions from the board on this one? Electric buses.
Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Thank you. I move approval of the resolution for the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust Agreement.
I'll second.
Thank you, Vice President Bozé with the motion, Secretary Anderson with the second. Any further discussion? I'll just say congratulations. All those in favor of approving this resolution say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, we have approved the resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Moving on to action item D, Resolution 2022-2023-6, declaring fixed asset surplus and requesting approval to dispose of same. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President. And again, Mr. Romero, take us through this resolution.
Thank you, Superintendent, President, and board members. Second resolution this evening we're considering. We have an excess of buses at the Transportation Department, as typically happens after the buses reach a lifespan of about 12 years or more. They're taken out of service and replaced with new buses. That's funded through the New Mexico Public Education Department. That's occurred. These buses are excess surplus buses that we would like to send at this point for scrap, because they've been cannibalized and used for parts, and to be able to remove those from our inventory and move forward with that. So we would ask that you approve this resolution, which also is, I could read it if you'd like. Very straightforward. It talks about the Transportation Department declaring a list of excess buses. Transportation Department has completed an inventory, and this list of buses that you have before you are no longer utilized by the district, and we ask that the district approve the resolution so that these buses can be removed from the inventory and removed from the property.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Any questions from the board?
Madam President,
Go ahead, Secretary.
I move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Abeyta. We have a motion by Secretary Anderson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or otherwise? Okay, thank
you.
you, Mr. Romero. Moving on to Roman numeral 8, our presentation on 2021-22 student assessment data. Superintendent.
Thank you, Board President Noble, members of the board. Taking us through our presentation tonight is Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Ms. Vanessa Romero, and also our Executive Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Mr. Peter McWayne. Deputy Superintendent.
Thank you, President Noble, members of the board, Superintendent Chavez. This evening, we'd like to We got our end-of-year summative assessment from our state assessments. So we want to go through those results, but at the same time, we also want to talk about different types of assessments and the value of those assessments as we move forward to adjust our instructional practices. So just a very brief description of how we use assessments to inform instruction. Formative assessments are typically given weekly or bi-weekly, and it's usually devoted to 1 or 2 standards. It's within the current week of what's being taught. It can be informal, and it's explicitly tied or connected to what is being taught in the classroom. It's for practice so that we can determine small group instruction, targeted interventions. And with this, standards-based grading is super important. We've identified priority standards, and from these priority standards, we are working in district PLCs, grade level PLCs, and creating formative assessments to drive instruction. We have more confidence in this because it's immediate, and we get immediate feedback on the kids' learning. Interim assessments, such as the IMSA, which is a state assessment, is given 3 times a year. It's given at the beginning, the middle, and the end of the school year. And basically, that's our benchmark to determine if we are on track to making progress and creating understanding and proficient students. And then we have our summative assessment, which is given to us by the state, and that is an overall, what did our kids learn within the school year? I want to say, once again, we have lots of confidence in our formative assessments. Peter's going to talk about, and you guys can remember last spring, we talked about our interim assessment. At that time, about 50% of our kids were on target to proficiency, but then we took the summative assessment and we saw about a 30% drop or a 20% drop. And so I think that's why we have to rely on our formative assessments. Next slide. I shared this slide with you last April when we were reviewing our interim assessments, and I just want to go through a very quick timeline again. In 2018, 2019, our interim assessment at the time was the NWEA MAPS assessment, and that was our interim assessment for the beginning, middle, and end of year. And then our summative was the PARC assessment. In 2019, 2020, we utilized the interim assessment again, but that was during the pandemic. So we only provided the beginning and the middle of this school year, and then of course we shut down. And so there was no summative assessment. In 2021, we decided to move our interim assessment to the IMSA instead of NWEA. That was free. It's provided by the PED in the state, and so it's a free interim assessment for us. So we did the beginning and middle of the school year, and then the state moved to the IMSA state assessment instead of the PARC. But at that point, it was all voluntary. We put out a survey to families and asked them if they wanted to participate in the summative assessment, and we had less than 10% participate. Last school year, we continued to use the IMSA as our interim assessment for the beginning, the middle, and the end of year. And then we also had our summative assessment. And so, next slide. Mr. Peter McWayne is going to talk about some of the disconnect between our interim assessment and our summative assessment.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Vanessa Romero. President of the Board, Noble, board members, Superintendent Chavez. Coming back from remote learning, back into the pandemic, we were super excited to have some familiar ground, and our IMESA interim assessment was some of that familiar ground. So coming back in, we were ready to leverage this data to really inform instructional practices. Our IMESA data showed students moving from level 1 into needing support, nearing proficiency. That is the continuum of learning articulated through that tool. So we were seeing appropriate patterns with our students. We saw that 20% of our students were projected to be proficient in math. For the most part, we were seeing, not for the most part, exclusively, we were seeing positive gains between 3 and 8% for all of our students and all of our grade levels. We were moving up from level 1 to nearing proficiency. We even had a celebration as a result of our interim assessments for 7th grade math, showing 5% gain in math proficiency from BOI to MOI. Then we had our summative assessment. Our summative assessment, our ELA scores were 20% below what our interim assessments were showing. This was a huge surprise for us because although IMESA was at no cost to the district, it's also made by the same company, and we were advised by having an interim assessment connected to the summative assessment developed by Cognia, the same company, that we would have very actionable data as a result of that from our interim assessments. And so now we have some concerns. Next slide, please.
Mr. McWayne, can I
Sure.
add something real quick?
Yes, sir.
Again, as we're talking about the predictability, we've talked to a very informed individual that's really keyed into some of the assessments given, and we were advised that IMESA really has about a 60% predictability, and when you're looking at quality assessment, you want to see 70% or higher. NWEA is closer to 75 or 80% predictability, so that's why we're making a reevaluation of what type of assessments we're providing our students and our staff. We don't want to give our students, their parents, our community, our educators high hopes, and then they get to that summative assessment and they see regression. So we want to make sure that we're providing very transparent data, and we're doing our work to make sure that the assessments we provide have a high predictability rate.
Thank you, sir. So analyzing this first set of graphs, we see our Santa Fe Public Schools in reading, and we're seeing appropriate movement of students. If we look at the bar graph on the far left with the 31, 22, 47, and then that's our beginning of the year assessment, and then we go to our middle of the year assessment, the 27, 24, 49. We see the green, the on target, grow from beginning of the year to middle of the year. We also see the red, the need support, shrink. So by moving students from our lower levels of our continuum of learning and moving them up into the upper levels of the continuum of learning for reading, that information is telling us that our tactics are being successful and we're moving students. Next slide. When we look at the same graph for math, yes, these numbers are low. It's right there. When we look at our beginning of the year to middle of the year, our on-target students, we doubled that proficiency, the level of proficiency, the percentage of our students in on-target, and we're doing that by decreasing the percentage of our students that need support to the magnitude of 11% just from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year. That's statistically significant. Next slide, please. You can imagine our surprise when we got our summative assessment, and our summative assessment results were not in line with our interim assessment results. So on our summative assessments, grades 3 through 8, our proficiency was in line with the New Mexico proficiency scores as a state. Student proficiency in our grades 3 through 8 in English language arts was, again, similar to this proficiency in the state, but wildly different than our mile markers along the way, our interim assessment, the IMESA. And students in grades 3 through 8 generally had lower math proficiency. Now, I do think it's noteworthy to say that as I go back and review our strategic plans, back in 2016-17, when we started our strategic plan that we're still implementing, the Park assessment gave us a math proficiency of about 16.7, not about, at 16.7% proficiency. We look at our IMESA interim assessments in 2020, 2021, we were at 18% proficient. 2021 to 22, now we're at 24% proficient. So even though these interim assessments did not offer an appropriate roadmap to make instructional moves off of, we still made appropriate tactical moves, and we're still growing our students. Next slide, please.
So now we want to talk about what we're doing to address proficiency and getting kids on grade level. And of course, it is standards-based grading and instruction. We have a focus, sorry, just a minute. We're prioritizing standards-based grading in a strategic way because it provides actionable feedback on where kids are. We're designing formative assessments based on the priority standards that were chosen, and it creates equity for all of our students, regardless of their background. If they're students with IEPs, we're ensuring that all kids are taught at grade level standard, and then we're doing the work to provide targeted interventions so that kids reach standard. We're also identifying focus areas from both the interim assessment and the summative assessment and looking at trends to see what are we needing to focus on as a district in reading and math, but then also going to the school site and helping schools identify those trends. And just for example, we've identified in 3rd and 4th grade, we need to focus on literary text performance. But in 8th grade, we need to focus on analysis and interpretation, and that may vary by school site. So it's identifying trends. I think you've read in our weekly bulletin from the superintendent, we have math coaching cycles to include comprehension strategies. And so we have a lot of our schools working with CES and people in curriculum and instruction to do lesson study design. So it's choosing a priority standard, designing a lesson together, going into the classroom, teaching the lesson, and then coming back and looking at student work. We're also providing interventions during core instruction, and that includes, I've talked about before, ST Math in elementary and ALEX at our secondary sites. So they're getting the core standards, but then they're also getting simultaneously some intervention support. We're also continuing with our community of practice to provide intentional professional development to support schools, and that includes standards-based grading and creating assessments. But I do want to say that sites do have the autonomy to choose additional professional development that's relevant to their school site. And then it also just informs instructional materials that we may need, or strategies that we may need to provide our teachers.
And I just want to emphasize one thing, because you did mention it, but I want to reiterate. It provides equity for all students across the district, no matter what school they attend, at all grade levels. So I think that's extremely important because it ties into the next slide.
I want to say that one more time. Our standard-based approach to accelerated learning, one of the main benefits of that is that a standard is evaluated on the same criteria regardless of geography, regardless of school, and that is a huge step forward for equity. We use our assessment data in a myriad of ways. We look at our interim data to identify areas where our programs and our tactics are succeeding, and we also look at our interim data to find areas of growth. When we analyze our metadata from our interim data and our summative data, that informs the professional development on skills and content, which we then differentiate to school sites. We focus our tactics that come off of data to determine what do we need to do next on Monday in the classroom. And I tell you what, with having our interim data not being a reliable predictor of our summative assessments, I am very proud to be working in a district that is investing in building capacity within teachers, because so many districts will spend their money buying programs, buying supplemental instructional materials, which we have great programs, we have supplemental instructional materials, but Santa Fe Public Schools is investing specifically in building capacity within teachers. And the teachers, when they come together in their collaborative sessions once a week to look at student work and student assessments, to plan the next steps moving forward, to determine which students need intervention, which students need a higher degree of intervention, and which students need extensions. They're using teacher-generated formative assessments. Common formative assessments, I think, is perhaps the secret ingredient in creating the recipe for success as we move forward, and leveraging the expertise of our teachers will give us that stability when perhaps other programs didn't. I know that we have adopted very high quality instructional materials for math and ELA, and intervention instructional materials like ALEX and ST Math. No programs are going to solve us forward, and I don't believe that programs are going to be a systemic solution to increasing student achievement. However, having high quality instructional materials that are culturally and linguistically relevant, and that leverage the best technology like artificial intelligence to support students' learning, gives teachers the time and space to pull the small group of students that need specific targeted instruction, so that teacher can give that student the prescription of instruction that they need to be successful. Additionally, when we look at our focused instructional time, we see some statistics up there. I know when I was a principal, I always said to myself, I had a 45-minute classes at my school, at my last school that I was a principal at. 5 minutes a day for a 180-minute year is 1 month of class instructional time. So by leveraging standard-based instruction and focusing teacher tactics on the specific outcomes that students are intended to learn, will help us maximize the time in the classroom. I fully believe that the standard-based approach is the way to go.
And going back to what Superintendent Chavez said, accelerated learning aligns with the Yazzie Martinez lawsuit. We're responding to the needs for a sufficient and uniform system of education for all of our students. It provides low-income, Native American, English language learners and students with disabilities programs and services necessary for them to learn and thrive. And it addresses low proficiency rates in our reading and math. And it furthers the ability for students to be college and career ready. Next slide. We wanted to share some examples of what our report cards look like this school year for Pathway 1 schools, and then also show you all of our Pathway 1, 2, and 3 schools on the right-hand side. Has a really specific assignment form based on the standards. I don't know if it needs explanation. On the left-hand side, it's the report card with the new grading system. On the right-hand side, it's the assignments and the specific skills that kids are receiving. And I've heard from parents and from teachers that they're really satisfied because they can actually log into PowerSchool now and see the specific assignments based on the skills.
Just want to add, it provides transparency for parents and also for the students. It's no longer just a number or a letter on the report card. There's some really important information to really pull from these report cards, and also parent-teacher conferences.
Next slide. And just going back to our original question and considerations, do we move forward with utilizing the IMSA as our interim assessment? Do we possibly look at going back to NWEA? to help us identify benchmarks for learning for our students. We know that our interim assessment, the IMSA, is free. But if we went to a different interim assessment, not necessarily NWEA, it's about 80,000 to 100,000. But I guess we need to determine what's best for our students.
And not at this time. We'll come back during budget season to talk about some of these decisions that we have to make and what's best to move forward.
And that concludes the presentation.
And we stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Questions from the board?
Madam President?
Go ahead, Secretary.
Thank you. I just have a few questions, like I always do. I feel like, listening to you talk about formative assessments, it seems like there's a lot of value in them, I was just wondering if there are trends that you can draw from the formative assessments that might help us understand, how students are learning in their classrooms.
We can. I think we can do that eventually by school site and by grade level. And then, of course, looking at that district-wide. As we've mentioned, we have early release for secondary and, of course, our early release in elementary. And we're super excited because we have teachers across school sites and content having these discussions about the priority standard and then creating assessments as a science team from both Capital and Santa Fe High. So I think when we get really good at developing these assessments, we can definitely come back and look at the trends. I do want to say when the priority standards were identified, we looked at both our interim and summative assessments and identified high leverage standards on those tests as well to ensure that we were not necessarily teaching to the test, but that we were covering the content on the test. Peter, did you want to add?
Great, thank you. How does is it IMSA? Is that how I say it? Okay. How does the IMSA compare to the PARC test?
The interim assessment compared to the PARC?
No. The
summative.
The summative assessment.
I don't know as far as comparisons.
Yeah, I just wondered if it was a different test, if you felt like it was a better assessment tool or.
Yeah. I know they were completely different companies. Okay. I don't know about the validity or I can ask.
And that's why we're also looking at the predictability percentage, which ones align better to that summative.
Okay.
So again, when we talked about NWA, just as an example and what we're currently using, and we gave you the percentages of predictability, 60 versus 75, closer to 80%. Again, it could be any assessment, and so we're really researching it, but it's about that percentage of proficiency that it can predict.
Right, that makes sense. This next one is maybe more of a comment than a question, but just looking through slide 3, the 2018 to 2021 student assessments, it looks like 2021, 2022 is really the only data point that we have for that particular summative assessment with a good portion of people participating, right? So we're really only looking at one.
Right, this is our
data point.
baseline.
Okay.
This is our baseline.
Got it, that makes sense. Are there concerns, to that end, are there concerns about changing our assessments without more data points?
I think it would be having discussions with principals and teachers. I think if we did decide to go back to NWEA, we used that for many years, and teachers really liked it. It's adaptive, so it's not necessarily like at the grade level, but it's where the kid is, and so you can kind of determine, they're called RIT scores, where they are, and like the steps that you would need to take to inform instruction.
Great, that's awesome to know that there's lots of history there for sure. I think Board President Noble asked this question the last time that we checked in about this assessment, but looking at our math scores, and they're not terribly different from the state scores. But why, I don't expect you to answer for the state, but there are entire gubernatorial campaigns, built around this right now. Why are our math scores so low?
I think part of it, and I do remember saying in the past and in the spring, and I've always said this, there's so much comprehension in math. So we have kids that can maybe add or subtract, but then when you put it in a word problem or they have to justify or reason or break it down, there's lots of comprehension in math now, and I think that might be part of it. Peter, I don't know if you have
And
another
I also want to
idea.
add, there hasn't been a great investment by the state into math. We've talked about reading, we've talked about other content areas, but there hasn't been a great investment into math. So this year, the New Mexico Public Education Department has kind of adopted this year to really engage in math practices and looking at it. And we're also doing it on our own behind the scenes as well on what foundational skills at what grade level do they have to obtain to be successful to move forward.
You wanted to add anything? Any other thoughts? I also think writing is important in math, and I think we need to incorporate more writing when we're looking at math.
Perhaps it's also noteworthy to identify that we have a large percentage of teachers on an alternative licensure program, and it's possible to be in a classroom with very, very minimal math exposure and a post-secondary experience. Santa Fe Public Schools, as well as all the other school districts across the state, are operating not only as a primary and secondary institution, but also as a post-secondary institution. The letters training coming out of the state right now is a tactic the state is leveraging to really ameliorate the impacts of perhaps shortcomings from our post-secondary institutions across the state.
Thank you. That's really helpful to hear that there are things being done to address that. On slide 9, I love seeing differentiated instruction. I've seen it matter a lot in my own kids' lives. How do educators differentiate instruction? I imagine they have really broad ranges within their classrooms.
Yeah, I'll just give you examples. As a first grade teacher, you teach a lesson based on grade level, and then you go around and you do checks for understanding, and you see kids aren't getting a particular concept, and you pull that small group for 10, 15 minutes and put everyone to do independent activities, and then you rotate to another group. I think elementary teachers are super, super good at differentiating and small group instruction. And I think we could improve, not only in elementary, but secondary as well.
Sorry, I can't get my, I think that might have been my last question. I just wanted to say, and I mentioned this to you, Deputy Superintendent Romero, and to you, Superintendent Chavez, but it was really great as a parent being able to see in Power School and also at our parent-teacher conference, the link between the assignment and the standard. Rather than looking in Power School and seeing worksheet 1, project 2, or, just grades for individual work, to actually see, okay, my child was assessed in learning beginning, middle, and end of a story by reading this particular story and then assessing in this particular way. And it gives me as a parent a really good insight into what we need to be working on at home and the kinds of questions that I can ask my child to hopefully reinforce things for her at school. And also just to know that a teacher is paying that close attention to each and every child is really, I think, pretty outstanding. So I appreciate that.
Good. Thank you.
I'm all done.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Secretary Anderson, for so many great questions. Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Superintendent, Mr. McWayne. We really appreciate your work. Keep being so thoughtful and brainy, please. Okay, we will move on to our board discussion and possible action, which is just that, board discussion and possible action items if we want to. I guess first of all, want to say to the Mandela folks who spoke on this item, thank you very much for coming. Really appreciate it, especially you students. That is really something that we always want more of, is student comment and engagement, and we really appreciate that. And I appreciate much of what many of you said, including, some of the sort of core reminders of the IB curriculum and learner profile items there, like kindness and, being kind. And I really do think that this whole conversation and reimagining project that we have worked on as a board, as a community for more than 3 years. We have had 3 different boards, including this one, support the reimagining process. It began back over about 3 years. It began back in 2019. And at that time, we had a lot of folks in the room because there was a consideration of closing 3 schools. And one of my great heartbreaks in being on this board is that we get engagement only when there's a threat or a perceived threat. And I don't know how to answer that, except, we have launched the reimagining process and are going to try to have positive, transparent, and strengths-based engagement. And I am determined personally, and my pledge to all of you is to listen incredibly hard and observe around the issues and items that come forward, as my elementary science teacher at E.J. Martinez taught me to, which was always, to listen and observe more and really seek to understand and see all the angles. And I guess I want to say, and we'll open this up to discussion from the board soon, but I did put this item on the agenda. And I guess I want to clear up what I think is some misunderstandings and misinformation, and which is also really just breaking my heart a little bit. There was never, ever any implication, and I really don't know where it came from, but it tells me we've got a hard road ahead in this conversation. There was never any implication that a permanent home and stability for Mandela to get what it needs was off the table. That's a gross misunderstanding, I have to say. There was never any implication that the board or this district would not honor what voters approved in the 2021 bond. And to hear some of those mentions really is just so discouraging, because that's not the intention. Mandela has, in the approval, I'd asked the superintendent of the 2021 bond, $22.5 million. There's a little bit more that carries over from the 2017 bond. It's the single largest project in the 2021 bond. This school has the intention of the district, the board, and the CRC, more money than any other for a new facility, and the implication of that has never changed and is not changing. The reason that I placed this item on the agenda and have spent the better part of many weeks and hours now trying to understand some of where we are and what we're looking at is in part because the chair of the CRC asked me to put this on the agenda. I did my best at some language, which, we can choose to keep, amend, or not vote on, table. There's a lot of different items here, but
what I have worked very hard and spent, honestly, I don't know how many hours and how much energy and loss of sleep trying to understand is why we got to where we got to at the CRC, which was a consideration of some different options for Mandela, including potentially recommending taking over another school's building. With some specific schools being mentioned without engaging that school community that has not had a chance to understand or organize, and it has not been done transparently, and that is the piece that really hit me in the gut, hit the chair of the CRC in the gut, and hit I've talked to a number of members of that committee. Again, I've spent a lot of time on this and trying to understand. And it struck me as sort of the opposite of an equitable approach, where we have, I don't know how we got there. Even the suggestion that, you know, one school can just take over another. And I have had people say to me that, you know, there's concern that there may be some members on the CRC who want to force the board to consider closing schools right now, and that there are any number of things going on. And I have pulled apart some of the threads of information, but I don't feel like I understand. And truly, this item was an effort to say, can we please pause and not do the thing that the reimagining process that has developed over the past 3 years through the pandemic, and that we have probably a unique opportunity right now to do successfully, because we're reinventing education post-pandemic, because we have stimulus money, as we saw in some of our presentations tonight, and we're not in a budget crisis. And because we have an incredibly engaged community that cares about public education in this town, and all of those things maybe give us a chance to do something that is really hard, that has a high likelihood to fail, and to go back to the regular old thing where we sort of fight for resources and say, you know, how about we do this for my thing and not your thing? And I have really, really hoped that we wouldn't go there, that we could do something differently. And I still hope that we can, with great reflection and some creative problem solving as a community, really work on the greater good. And key to that reimagining process is the idea to not talk about facilities first, but to talk about teaching and learning and what students need. We have led with the facility conversation forever in this district. We have always talked about, and I get it because we allocate bond money, but it becomes, and I've told this story, my, I don't know, first, second, third meeting of this board, we were down here in a open square doing a study session, and we started talking about closing schools. And I was a brand new board member, and there was a lot of conversation about square footage and about bond money and about renovation costs and HVAC systems and all these things. And I have a lot more sympathy now than I did then, but it was super alienating because nobody talked about students and nobody talked about teaching and learning. And I remember feeling like I just wanted to push myself back from the table and say, what are we doing? I ran for the Board of Education. I want to be here. I want to do this work, but because it's about teaching and learning. It's about students who are engaged and will show up, and teachers who can bring their passion and do the thing for them. Well, here we are, almost 6 years later. And, you know, I don't know what to do. I am absolutely 100% committed to transparency. And to sticking with what we committed to our voters and to doing our best for our students in an equitable way. We have got to bring equity to this conversation and recognize the disproportionate privilege that has often driven these conversations. If I tried to understand what happened with Atalaya and why that got built so big, and there are stories of organized communities and realtors and kickbacks, and I mean, honestly, trying to understand how this has worked and how this district has ended up making the facilities investments and decision it has mostly defeated me. But I know that we agree that we want to do better, that we need great spaces for our programs, like the incredible IB program, and for the teaching and learning to happen, that we want access to opportunities. And, you know, personally, I am pretty much ready to die on this hill, that we don't just keep doing it the same way, where we're kind of overseeing a slow strangulation of public education in an inequitable way. So the idea and the response to the CRC chair and what I've heard from a lot of committee members was to take a breath, to take a pause and not bring forward from the CRC a recommendation that could potentially pit school communities against each other, that could upend the clear intention of the reimagining process and the validation of that process by 3 different boards, again, including this one, to not put facility conversations first, but to talk about teaching and learning. And I'm discouraged, I'm disappointed. I know it's what happens. It's sort of nobody's fault. It's just humans and what we do, and we all talk, and I've been trying to understand this, and I'm sure I've gotten plenty of misinformation or slanted information as I've talked to folks. But this idea that if we vote on this tonight, suddenly it's 4 years. And I saw the Mandela email that went out, and I don't understand it. I don't understand where some of these assertions came from. Because, you know, we just approved a bond in 2021, and there's a plan. And that is that, you know, Mandela has this $22.5 million, and it has a home at Laragoite. I understand also that there are complexities with the plan that is less than a year old from voter approval, in that construction costs are rising, in that, you know, things change as we learn more and move forward. So I get that, but I also think I'm not sure we should be ditching this plan just yet. Like, we have a plan, and it's kind of a nice property, and would like to think that with $22.5 million we could do some good stuff for Mandela, and I have to believe that. So I guess I have some requests of all of us, and am prepared to, you know, really work to do it myself, which is to reflect, to listen, to trust in people's good intentions, and to continue to see the core of what's important, which is teaching and learning, and the bigger picture, which is the whole district, because we have some pretty serious imbalances between small old schools, big, huge schools, the availability of money, where our young people are living, what's possible with busing, what is the educator to student ratio in classrooms, what is the per pupil instruction cost, and even things like how advocacy can happen, because frankly, it's much easier if you speak English. It would be, you know, we do offer interpretation services, but that's deeply imperfect, frankly. So my ask, I guess, of the Mandela community is to continue to advocate, to work on seeing the big picture and getting correct information, to engage in creative problem solving with us, because we need this. We need this as a community. And again, we have a high likelihood of failure. I understand that at the CRC there has been some sentiments along the lines, was even mentioned tonight, well, the district has done reimagining before. I get that. Is that a reason not to try to do the right thing now? So with that, I guess I would like to ask my fellow board members for any thoughts, comments, and ideas on a path forward at this time. Something else I wanted to say is that the way we do bonds, and we can ask the superintendent and our finance director to explain some of this, but is we, in essence, do liquidity in tranches. And in the April 2022 bond sale, Mandela funding was not in that tranche. The next sale is July of 2023, which could be, it looks like, it would be fiscal year 24. So we have some time on this. I hope that we can, and I think, you know, with all of our projects, we're facing rising costs. And so how, again, this sort of moved forward at the CRC around this one particular thing, you know, I know that there has been some intention there, and there are a lot of good people working on that committee, but where we are right now and how things impact the work of the larger reimagining that I see as really critical to a good path forward for this district is important. And I don't really understand how we're at this sort of point of what I would say is false urgency of somehow thinking that we might delay anything that's happening with Mandela. It's in this bond. It's in this bond as the biggest project, and we've got to work on it. And I understand that there have been some questions as to whether the current site can do all the things, including serve the students while there's construction. We've had a bunch of problems like that before, and we can work through them. There are plenty of people who had to attend Milagro in the old Capshaw building while we built that school. It is not ideal. If we could snap our fingers and have a beautiful school without the pain of construction tomorrow, I promise you we would. But no matter what path we take, there's some time, there's some construction timelines and all of these things to be worked through. We have still supply chain issues. There's a lot of unpredictability, and you know, and this is hard, but I really also want to be clear that we will honor what the voters approved in this bond. The intention is to get Mandela a fabulous facility to keep doing what it's doing, which makes that school fabulous, which is the teaching and learning. It's the students and the teachers and the community that's there. All right, I'm sure I've said plenty. And I probably will have more to say, but I would like to ask my fellow board members for thoughts, comments, and ideas.
Madam President?
Please go ahead, Secretary.
I have a clarifying question before I launch into my full question. So, and I think Mr. Martinez, you being up there is perfect because my question is for you and for the superintendent. So in terms of the bond sale and liquidity, does that mean, I just want to like dumb this down, or no, that's an ableist term, but really like clarify this to the nth degree. Does that essentially mean that the cash is not available for the construction until fiscal year 2024?
Secretary Anderson, that is, and board member Superintendent Chavez, that is correct. So just to give just a highlight of how the bonds, the 2021 bond it's the ability to sell up to $100 million. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're selling $100 million in 1 year, in 2 years. We have to do it within a 4-year period. For instance, just for history, in the 2017 bond cycle, we sold $40 million. 2018, we sold $30 million. 2019, we sold $15 million. And 2020, we sold $15 million. So it really is just established based on what the need is. You have to have reasonable explanation and like 18 to 24 months of preparation work done before you can actually go to bonding agents to sell these bonds. Also, the bonds have to be spent after the money's been drawn, at least by 5 years, but there are incentives to spending the money within 3 years because of local tax law. So if you spend the money within 3 years, the funds are not subject to arbitrage rebate, which means that any amount of interest earnings above the borrowing rate does not have to be rebated back to the federal government, but they have to be spent at least within a 5-year period. So just because we have the ability and the voter approval to sell $100 million worth of bonds does not mean that they were sold in 1 year. We only have the cash on hand for the $30 million that sold in April of 2022. So that is the accurate information.
Mr. Martinez, I'm sorry, I was going to call you Mr. Romero.
Yeah.
Mr. Martinez, can you tell us what those projects for this first bond sale are?
The $30 million that sold in April of 22 were the Santa Fe High new cafeteria commons, the Eco Campus, just the 2.7 of that project million. Roofing and building envelope maintenance, HVAC upgrades and air quality improvements, outdoor classrooms and multi-use spaces, and sustainability solar expansion. The remainder was left for inflation costs. These are actually things that we have to break up and send to the bond advisors and to all the underwriters and the investors to show, as I mentioned, that the due diligence work has been done and that there's an actual need, that the projects are ready to start. There's a significant amount of work, which Deputy Superintendent Wagner can really speak to that has to go in before projects can actually start.
Thank you. I'm kind of interested to hear what other board members have to say before I launch into. I'm always the first one to launch into my tirades, so.
Not
I'm
tonight. I went first.
Oh, yeah, sure. I'm interested to hear, and then I probably have some things to say.
Go ahead, Board Member Beta.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess I didn't really hear the answer to your question. So am I to understand that Mandela School bond proceeds weren't planned to be spent and construction started until when?
Board Member Abeyta, are you asking when the bonds for the Mandela project are to be sold?
Yes, and construction started.
Okay, they were going to in July of 23.
So July of 23, and then
Which is fiscal year 24.
And then, so once you sell them, how long does it take to actually start construction on a building?
I'll let Deputy Superintendent Wagner speak to that.
Board President, Board Member Superintendent Chavez, the intent was to include the Mandela School in the next bond sale in July of 2023 and have the project what we call shovel ready. which requires that 12 to 24-month backup where you're actually producing construction drawings. Within about 2 months of the bond sale, I'm looking for our CFO, the cash becomes available. It can be even earlier, within weeks to max couple of months. Right, so the construction roughly was, you know, when we were forecasting out at the onset of this bond cycle, this $100 million implementation, that was the plan. But we, as Mr. Martinez mentioned, we don't submit a plan to our bond advisor until we have shovel-ready projects.
And so will approval of this resolution impact our plans for Mandela? Will it delay it? Will we continue to just proceed as normal?
If I understand your question correctly, I need to really hear the direction or the decision of the board to know what effect that will have on any project. I haven't really heard a distinct action, but we have not articulated to our bond advisors yet what projects we will be selling for at the next bond cycle. It was intended that Mandela would be in that queue based on prior project planning.
But if we take action tonight, what happens to that intention?
It depends on your action.
So if we take action to approve the resolution to pause on facility recommendations, what happens to that intention?
So if I may.
Thank you.
Board Member Abeyta, it's a request to our advisory committee that we would say, let's please not bring forward a different recommendation from the one that has existed that the board approved, which is it's closer to $26 million in its total because there's $4 million from the 2017 bond for Mandela to be on the Latagote site. The options that have bubbled to the top, which again, I don't even really understand why our committee started doing different options from what was approved, but 2 of them involve displacing existing schools. And the third one was more like, let's consider this as part of the reimagining, again, going forward with where we've been. We have an idea and a plan. We absolutely will still need to address the issue of rising costs and probably adjust plans because our existing plans will cost more than they did when they were made. And this happens a lot. I know you're familiar with the cycle with projects. And so truly, what I intended with the best intentions was really just to dial down the drama and say, let's stay on course with what we've planned and do some creative problem solving and not have our advisory committee, the CRC, bring forward new and unsolicited recommendations on different things to do for the Mandela home.
Okay. I guess my last question for now is the resolution doesn't say when we would hold a joint study session. Do you have an idea of when in 2023 we would do that?
I do. Okay. And that, my hope is that some of this, as Dr. Veronica Garcia, who is our chief strategist in the reimagining process, and as I think many of us know, can be an incredible taskmaster. These processes don't necessarily need to be linear. We don't need to do one thing and then another and then another. So my hope is that we can do that we can, if we establish a good foundation to start with trust and with the understanding that we need to center teaching and learning before the facilities conversation, that we can then go fast. My hope would be in the spring or summer. We can do this any time.
And truly, you know, if the CRC wants to bring us recommendations, we can. I just didn't love the idea of, you know, it was getting really messy to the point that a number of CRC members reached out to me, including the chair, saying, we could use some direction from the board. We serve at your pleasure. There's an advisory committee. And again, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand all of this. And thought it might just be a good idea to say, hey, let's do some reimagining. Let's value the work of the committee that has dug in at a level that the board doesn't. That's their job in order to do their advisory purpose, to fulfill their advisory purpose. And let's dig in the spring, ideally as soon as possible. Not take, I mean, we're really hoping that the reimagining process takes 12 months, not 18. And so we're like done at this time next year is the idea. And that we could do some overlapping work on the facilities conversation, having established the reimagining principles and really trying to center teaching and learning and to listen to all our school communities with the equity that I believe they deserve, which includes going to places and in languages where the school communities that do not typically advocate actively are for themselves. But, you know, I mean, I actually don't see that there could, my hope would be there doesn't have to be any delay in any of this beyond what is already happening in the world that we live in with supply chain issues, with pandemic recovery. I mean, things are shifting underneath our feet, no question about it. But everything, every project in this bond is going to cost more. You know, this is not unique to the Mandela Project or to any others. And so to do this in a more holistic way, to look at the whole bond, to look at what's possible, to try and creative problem solve and figure out how we as a district can do, frankly, what I think we're mandated to do, which is to honor voters and live within our means and get students and teachers the best facilities that we can as expeditiously as we can. We absolutely have to do all of that. And I think we can. And truly, you know, it didn't feel great that if the CRCA was going to do this, that it would bring forward these new ideas that were not requested by the board, and start this conversation about facilities front and center again, just as we're trying to get reimagining. So, you know, however we can do it, we can have the CRC bring forward recommendations. We can see what happens. I mean, maybe, honestly, this all needs to get super messy. And, you know, I'm okay with all of it. Again, I'm just happy to die on this hill and die trying if that's what's necessary. But the idea was to really try and honor this reimagining process and let that go. And we have an existing plan for the bond, which we're going to have to problem solve around no matter what.
Okay, thank you.
Board Member Abeyta and members of the board, Superintendent Chavez, if I may, I just want to inform you that we're not required to sell bonds every single year. In fact, we did not have a bond sale from the GO bond in 2021. I won't start working on the bond sale for July of 23 until about the spring of 23, so we have some time to figure out really what projects are going to go on that sale, what amount is going to be in that sale. We could say, hey, we're going to kick out every project in fiscal year 24, so we're, you know, going to need to sell 70 million. Or we could say, hey, we only need to sell 15 million. Or we're not going to sell this year, and the following fiscal year, though, we're going to sell 60 million because we're going to get back on track. We have some time, but we are not required to sell bonds in any fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I appreciate that. And again, that was sort of the thinking, was we have some time, let's not, you know, subvert a really intentional process that I still believe has some great potential. But again, we can have the conversations. This was never an intention to squelch creative problem solving or silence anybody or not be transparent or anything like that. You know, it's perfectly acceptable for us to have all the conversations as authentically as we need to.
Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent. I first want to say thank you to everyone who came and spoke tonight. I really appreciate that, especially the students on a school night. I know you've had a long day, and you know, being here and participating is absolutely important, and we really, really appreciate it. I also would like to say how much I appreciate the work of all the volunteers on the CRC. I've sat on that committee for more than 2.5 years. I've been part of all of these conversations and listened to all of the different perspectives and historical context of different kinds of projects. And recently, much of that has centered on Mandela. And as we heard tonight, that was happening even before my time on that committee. I really appreciate that the school community wants a new building and to feel like they're in a permanent home. I know that they feel frustrated by this process, and those feelings are valid. Like, they're absolutely valid. I really want to say that. I also, because I sit on that committee, want to bring just a little bit more insight beyond what President Noble said already. The project that was brought forward to the board that we have been moving forward with to build a new school at the existing Lategoite site. Recently, that was presented to the CRC with a much higher price tag than what we originally allocated the bond money for. So it's not that there's not money or not land. It's just that because of the costs, the numbers that we've been given as a committee changed. And so that caused a lot of concern on the committee, and thus started having different conversations about what could be done instead. Again, that was not done at the direction of the board. That was the path the committee chose to take, even though the board has a plan that they've accepted already. So I think that that's an important clarification piece. At the same time, we're embarking on this process of reimagining with a lens on equity, right? With really a focus on equity. And we heard the words equity and transparency and access and school conditions several times tonight. And these are definitely important issues, and issues that we have to prioritize in addition to teaching and learning. It's not this or that, it's all the things. And we need to do that for everyone in the district. So I think that's kind of where we are as a board right now. And I think this request, as it's phrased tonight, as someone who sits on that committee, really what I read this as is go ahead and keep working on your other projects committee. Last week, we had a 3+ hour meeting about Mandela. And we've had many meetings like that just about Mandela. And there are lots and lots of other projects that the committee needs to be talking about. And so we, I think, can say, you've already brought us a suggestion. We have that. We're going to keep that. We're going to move forward with our reimagining. We know that there are some issues about the project as it exists. We can do some creative problem solving. And my hope is that early in 2023, we can meet with the CRC and talk about these things so that it's not one or the other. It's both at the same time. We can do hard things and find a solution that works for everybody. And again, this sense of urgency, it's not like we were going to break ground next month and now we're saying we're not doing that anymore. This doesn't necessarily have to mess up any timeline. It's certainly not going to be put off for 4 more years. So I'm sorry that, you know, that was somehow relayed to you. But this is just it. Like, we're being as transparent as we can be. And those plans haven't changed. Thank you.
Secretary Anderson.
Thank you so much. I have not sat on the CRC for 2.5 years. I've been on the CRC for a year. I haven't been on the board for 6 years. So I am relatively new to the conversation and am gathering information as quickly as I can. And as I almost called you Secretary Bose, but now I'm Secretary. Vice President Bose mentioned, a lot of my time on the CRC has been learning about the Mandela Project. And that's where a lot of my questions have come from the CRC, from the work on the CRC, is about the Mandela Project, and knowing that the Larragoite option is something that the board has is really interesting to me and shapes my understanding of kind of what's going on the CRC quite a bit. I just want to speak a little bit to the last CRC meeting. Normally, Vice President Bose and I give an update on what's been going on the CRC. And tonight we did not, because I think it makes more sense to do so here. When I walked into that, I'll back up. There were concerns raised at the CRC meeting that the board had, the board members in attendance had essentially made up their minds that the only possible move forward was to put the project on pause, which I know we now all understand that that is a sort of a false, or at least a misunderstanding of the process, but that we would be putting this project on the back burner until after the completion of reimagining, and that had sort of been a foregone conclusion. And I wanted to make it clear then, and want to make it clear now, that that was not any agenda of mine to walk into that meeting, and that, in fact, mid-meeting or even immediately after the meeting, had I been a member of the CRC, I would not have known what recommendation, if that was appropriate, to make to the board, because I was still processing everything that not only had come in the year prior, but that had specifically been discussed at that CRC meeting. As all of the board members know, in the letter from the CRC chair to the board, the option that had the plurality of sort of consensus was essentially a school closure, a move of Mandela to a specific school site with the discussion of displacing that school. Of course, the second of three options was to displace another school. And then the third of the three options was presented to us as having a price tag so exorbitant that it wouldn't, at least in my estimation, be a responsible use of our funds, with construction price rising. It was, I believe, almost twice as much as the 22.5 million that we have allocated for the Mandela Project. And I understand where members were coming from. I understand that this has been a very long time coming. And I do want to say that I am very concerned about the issues raised tonight and at that meeting regarding the current Mandela facilities. I mean, hearing about hands being too cold or classrooms reaching 100 degrees, it's simply not, it's not okay for people to have to teach or learn in those environments. And if, as we said, we could wave a magic wand and have that disappear tomorrow and have a brand new facility at the Larragoite site for $22.5 million, I would have no problem standing for that. But that's not what's before us, and it's frankly not what being in leadership is about, is being able to wave magic wands and make things instantly happen. If it were, I think that my race for school board might have had an opponent. I just wanted to add a little, we're all having a really difficult and serious evening. I remain very concerned that the most popular sort of consensus point was displacing a school without engaging that school at all. There were no members of that school there to speak that night. There were no members of the school to speak here tonight. I'm not sure how aware that community is. If I had to guess, I would say not at all. That the discussion is about closing their school to relocate another school. And I think it's particularly, I don't know if it's important, but it's notable that the demographics of that school are very reflective of the demographics of our district. It is a low-income school. It is a school primarily made up of students of color. And to say that we are going to close your school because your building is nice and we want to put another school there is, to me, it's just not okay. It doesn't sit well with any of my values. It doesn't sit well with the reason that I ran for this seat. It doesn't work for me at all. And I couldn't have articulated that at the CRC meeting because I was taking in so much information, and the price tag on that option was the right price. It was less than the $22.5 million that is allocated for the GO bond. It looked like the option that was on the table that left us being fiscally responsible. I do not get any inkling from this board nor from members of the CRC that the $22.5 or $24 million that was allocated by the voters in the GO bond for the Mandela Project would go anywhere else. The only suggestion that I heard of that was at the CRC meeting with the school relocation option, that there was a motion to reallocate that money to other projects and to relocate Mandela to a particular school. And my understanding is that that motion was not seconded or carried because the action item had not been properly noticed per the Open Meetings Act. And that gives me pause, because there was no engagement of the other schools community by the board or by the CRC prior to that school being suggested for closure. When I decided to run for this school board seat, I was asked by members of my own school community if I was for or against school closure, and if I supported small schools. And I'll just note, for those of you who don't know, 3 of my children attend a school that was slated for closure at the meeting very close to the reimagining meeting, at one of the meetings from which I believe, from which I believe this idea sprung. So it's not as though I'm not invested in schools that can be closed, but I was very clear with anyone who asked me that I am not, and I will state this again, I am not opposed to closing schools. I wish we would never have to close a school. I don't want to close a school. If there's literally anything else that can be done besides closing a school, I will vote for that option. But I did not run on the idea that I would never close a school. So it's not as though I think that that option is something that's totally off the table, never to be discussed again. I have no intention of proposing school closures, or there are no schools in my mind that should be closed. But it's not something that I feel like is totally outside of the realm of possibilities. And that said, the suggestion is not okay to have without engaging the school community. And it's not okay for the board to proceed as though that is an acceptable idea, to propose a closure of the school, to vote on a closure of a school without engaging the school community, and without engaging the school community at more than 1 meeting or more than 2 meetings or more than a school year, the end of a school year. I mean, you can't say, let's engage over your school closure, and by the way, that means your school won't be open again next year, and pack it in. I don't think that that's okay. And having an option on the table for the board to consider, I think means something. I don't think that this can't be a parallel process with reimagining. I don't think that it is predicated on the conclusion of reimagining. I think that it can play a big part in reimagining, that it can play a big part in the very beginning of reimagining if that's what the steering committee wants to do. And we have 3 members of the CRC, 3 voting members of the CRC who are on the steering committee of the reimagining process. So I can't imagine that it would not get full representation as part of the reimagining process. I walked in here tonight. I haven't discussed this resolution with any other board members. I walked in here tonight not knowing what I thought. I want to echo the thanks of my fellow board members of the Mandela community for coming out and for speaking, particularly for the students, but also particularly for the teachers, because you all have to be at school quite early tomorrow as well, and the longer I talk, the less sleep you get. And you're teaching in very difficult conditions. I don't think that anyone here would argue with that, and you're learning in very difficult conditions. And it's not fair. It's not fair that anyone should have to learn in those conditions. But that said, I just don't think we can have 2 trains running in opposition to each other. That's the wrong metaphor, but 2 things working in direct competition with one another. The idea that we would consider a school closure while we, on the other hand, say that we're going to start this reimagining process because we want to engage communities, and then on this hand say, but not this community, not for this reason. It doesn't work for me. Yeah, I don't have a good concluding statement. Those are the sum of my thoughts.
Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on that because I think, the opposition piece is really important. What this request that we're considering tonight does is say, please don't bring us a recommendation that would recommend closing a school as we're starting a reimagining process. Those things are in opposition to each other. And unfortunately, Mandela is stuck kind of in the middle of that. And, there's this financial constraint on building costs going up. So all the things are true, except that we don't want to start talking about closing schools before we get through our reimagining process, I guess, is what I think we're hoping to accomplish. Is that right?
Board President Noble.
Go ahead.
Thank you. My other concern, outside of the state of Mandela's facility, with talking about pausing this this process, is showing, and I think you covered this, but I just want to articulate it, which is showing respect for the CRC and all of the work that they put in to not only this project, but all of the projects on the GO bond. Is it possible to get a clarification on the CRC's role in making facility recommendations? What is the CRC's role in making facility recommendations?
I was going to say, yes, somebody can speak to that, but Vice President Bozé is deeply versed in this.
At the beginning of the time that I was sitting on the CRC, one of the people that was on the board worked very closely to make a beautiful document that clearly outlines all of the roles and responsibilities of the committee. So I will make sure that the superintendent sends that to you so that you can review it, because it's a long list of 6 different things that the CRC is really deeply involved with.
I am.
Beyond just how GO bond money is spent.
Thank you so much. Madam President?
Yes.
I actually have that document and have read through it, but that said, I wonder if Superintendent, you could sort of distill maybe a little bit sort of what or perhaps Deputy Superintendent Wagner, someone could step in and sort of distill like what the committee's actual role is in putting forth a facility recommendation specifically to the board.
I think both myself and Deputy Superintendent Wagner will tag team this. She can go a little more in depth, but really the roles are setting the facilities master plan, also prioritizing and reorganizing the facility master plan. So that's also under project review as part of the responsibility. So Deputy Superintendent, do you want to elaborate any? I covered it.
One thing I want to just make uber clear is that it is all recommendations to the board. Anytime there is consideration, reallocation, the CRC rolls up their sleeves, does wonderful hard work generally, and we are very fortunate to have really committed members serving on that committee. And then the board adopts recommendations or can elect not to adopt. And, so I think, and any number of the folks that I spoke to on the CRC are very clear on that, which is hence particularly the chair, who has served on the CRC for a very long time, asked for direction from the board. And again, this is sort of an attempt to meet that. One thing I can say is, again, we have some time. We actually, and I'm leaning towards even tabling this item tonight and not necessarily voting on it, because there's and I don't want to stop this discussion because it's a good one, but we have another board meeting before the next scheduled CRC meeting, and to some extent the objective here was always just to take the wind out of false urgency and strangeness and get us to be able to take a breath, do some creative problem solving. Secretary Vice President, see, I did it. I said it for so long. Yeah, as Vice President Bose said, we can do hard things and really work together to problem solve. And I guess I still hope, I hope I'm not Pollyanna that way. I'm feeling that way about this reimagining process because feels like we trip over the same things and the misunderstandings anyway, but we have time and we can all dig in to this issue, not together unless we do it in an open meeting, of course, with a published agenda, but yeah.
And I just want to add, I'll send the roles and responsibilities to all the board members. I know I've spoke to you two in general, but also just making it clear that it's a committee of the board and they advise the board. And of course, those recommendations can be accepted or can be denied. So just want to make that clear that it's not a standalone and it's a committee that sits under the board.
Thank you.
Madam President.
Go ahead, Board Member Beta.
After hearing the discussion this evening and especially from my fellow board members, I was actually going to make a motion that we approve the resolution and we ask the CRC to pause on facility recommendations, not just based on what I heard this evening, but you had actually said something that triggered the experience that I have with bonds and with facilities. Given the economic environment that we're in, I think it might be a prudent thing to kind of pause, especially with new plans or newer ideas until we know what's going to happen with our economy. With interest rates, I've seen in my past where buildings and plans had to be scrapped completely because interest rates had gone so high, construction costs had gone so high that you were going to end up with half a building than what was originally intended. And so I'm actually ready to support so that the CRC gets clear direction from us this evening, because I do think a pause is prudent at this time. And so if it's appropriate, I would make a motion that the board asks that the CRC pause on facility recommendations at this time in order to let the reimagining process proceed and develop.
Board President Noble.
Go ahead.
Before a second, I just have another question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm full of them, sorry. Is there any reason we can't fix the temperatures in the teachers' classrooms?
And we did make notes of it. You know, anytime we hear from our community in public forum, we make notes and we go back to correct. So
Okay.
that was a little surprising to me as well, but we'll go back and make sure that they're warm, especially now as the temperatures have dropped.
Yeah, that would be great. If we could even get like an update on that at a future meeting, just to make sure that our students aren't learning in what sound to me to be, you know, if not unsafe, then non-conducive to learning situations. Madam President.
Go ahead, Vice President.
Thank you. Again, before we move forward or not with this request, I did have some questions slash clarifications on the wording, and that was whether this was a request for all facility recommendations or just in regards to Mandela, or you know, what the thinking was, and or if we needed to change the wording on anything.
I think that's a very good question. I'm going to go ahead and second the motion for the purposes of discussion so we don't get too far out of the Roberts Rules protocols. And now, just to say, theoretically, when a motion is made, it needs to be responded to immediately, and then we go into discussion. And I don't know why I'm into these things, but no, I didn't miss it. Now moving on to your question, Vice President Bose, it could make sense. I mean, I would defer to you on this as to whether there's some wordsmithing that's needed, or you know, specificity around Mandela, or if we want to, you know, in any way signal a sort of larger look at the projects. And again, you know the inside of the CRC better than any of the board members up here, to address some of the rising costs and what we're facing, you know, because there is a bunch of work to be done. And I fear that this has become a little bit of a whirlpool. And, you know, again, this is designed to get us out of that. So do you have suggestions or feelings? Yeah.
I sort of am inclined to make a motion to table this and maybe revisit at the next meeting. I think we've had a really important discussion. I hope that we've provided some clarity to the community about the way this process was already intending to go, aside from, you know, the discussion last week at CRC and this request in front of us. That wasn't going to change the fact that we weren't breaking ground in 2 months anyway. So, you know, it's not really necessarily changing the trajectory of anything. And I would, you know, I think we can revisit it at the next meeting and see how we're feeling. And I'd like to do some thinking and collaboration with anyone who would like to do that, maybe on education around the process, or, you know, whatever things we think would help the specifically Mandela community feel like we are being transparent and that we are going to continue to fulfill the promise to the voters about the GEO bond money.
Any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Board Member Robeta.
Thank you, Madam President. I would be in favor of that, provided that there is work done between now and the next meeting, and a new resolution or an amended sheet is provided at the meeting that has additional language so that we don't start again and then try to wordsmith it at the meeting. So if we can do some of that work between the meetings, then I would be okay with the motion to table. Thank you.
I'll second the motion to table if that's, are we outside
So-
of Robert's rules?
Let me
Yeah.
let me do this. Board Member Abeyta, are you then willing to withdraw the motion that you made?
I don't know if I have to, because doesn't a motion to table supersede all other motions that are on the?
I don't know that.
I think
was
technically
thinking we
it does,
might
but
have to.
to make it easier, I'll withdraw my motion. But
Okay,
technically, I think
and as the
we'll have a friendly
second-
bet on that.
Okay, we'll have a friendly bet on the Robert's
But
rules,
I
and
think
we don't
Robert's
have
rules,
to.
a motion to table squashes mine, but I'll withdraw.
Okay, and that's friendly to me as the second. And Secretary Bose, do you want to go ahead and make your motion now, just to keep things linear, which they don't always have to be?
Madam President, members of the board, superintendent, I would like to make a motion to table this request and revisit at the next meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to table and a second on this, and I think some clarity on doing the work and, bringing forward some better wording and intention as we go forward. So any further discussion on the motion to table? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or otherwise? All right, we have tabled the item. Thank you very much. Thank you all for your thoughtfulness. Thank you to our students and parents and even those now absent folks who showed up and didn't quite have all of the fortitude that you did to stay with us until the very end. But we really appreciate you, and we appreciate you being here. Moving on to item B, reimagining. Do we want to talk about that anymore?
I think we did that already.
We've talked about it a lot. Just as a very brief update, the committee did have its first meeting. Again, Dr. Garcia can be a heck of a taskmaster. I think most of you, if not all of you, have had interviews with her. So that work is moving ahead in parallel as she's beginning key informant interviews as the committee gets established. The committee worked on some agreements around, that included transparency and trust and courage and all these things. The committee also agreed on a big list of communities to talk to. That was pretty impressive, and even to one of our public comments tonight, there was talk about the special education community, there was that sort of thing. So we will have the next meeting in November, and I'm now supposed to schedule my interview with Dr. Garcia. I believe that she has asked each of you, we sort of need some parallel process and work done. So I'm hoping that will move forward, and I will get updates from her. You all probably know more than I do, but she also is working on hiring help to coordinate the project as well as facilitators with the help of this superintendent. So, we should get more arms, legs, and horsepower, so to speak, into the reimagining process soon, which is, of course, important for us to go fast. Anything you want to add, Superintendent?
No, I think you've covered it, and we'll continue to move forward. There's some meetings that will take place between the scheduled meetings of the steering committee, so there's a lot of work even being done between those two scheduled meetings.
Okay. If there's nothing more on that, just to note, Superintendent, I do hope that we can discuss, and maybe you said, but it sounds like we need legislative priorities on our next agenda. And I do hope, as I think you were copied on an email to Linda Siegel, I hope she can weigh in and help us understand where our priorities should lie, as she is our person who watches the legislature closely and knows it deeply. Anything else for board discussion and possible action, future meetings? We've got some work to do. Advanced planning, November 10th, after Election Day, we have an audit committee, a tentative executive session, and a regular meeting scheduled where we will be bringing these items back. And then we have another meeting in November and then one meeting in December of the board. So just to note that. Also, I think Board Member Abeto will be out of town, but otherwise we've all given all our answers about the school board's meeting in early December. Anything else on advanced planning?
No, I just want to add, I'll be in Washington, D.C. Wednesday through Saturday of next week with our principal and a teacher from Asakia Madre. We will be picking up the National Blue Ribbons Award and attending their conference. So that's, very exciting stuff happening.
Wonderful. Anything else? Okay, it's probably quite enough for tonight. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.